just can't believe I would be kept from saying some of my favorite words of all time by Kira Chats personally and no one else.
That's right. And you know what? It brings
No
me
one
so much
else
pleasure to
stopping
do
me.
it. Oh, you should see the smile
If
on my
anyone
face.
wants to, you know, folks, I'm pretty sure it's in the recording. So if you want to hear which word is my favorite
Maybe
word,
the sickos will be able to have access to that.
Patrons!
Yeah, go listen to the podcast version of this when it's up. You will hear me say my favorite word a lot of times.
And you know, I'd actually like to say we are really, really, really close to our goal on Red Planet in the grand scheme of things.
And the Patreon.
On the Patreon. We're at £284 of we are
obviously our goal in the grand scheme of things is communism. But,
yes.
Yeah.
But the first goal that we need to get to before we get there is feeding Conrad, who has made the show a load better.
He's so hungry.
Luckily, he lives on oats and Twinkies, so it's okay. It's actually pretty cheap to feed
You know what
him.
oats he lives on as well, Kira?
Hmm.
Overnight oats. That's right. Overnight oats.
Gruel.
Are you like an overnight
Isn't
oat
gruel.
guy? Are you like?
I'm paid by big overnight oat.
Because overnight oat
Literally.
people
Big
love
oats.
to tell everyone that they eat overnight oats, and they always like act like this is some secret that they're like,
It
did
is.
you know? It's like,
It is.
yeah, things get mushy when you put them in liquid overnight.
Yeah.
That's the
It is.
case.
Literally gruel.
It is gruel.
You know, you are a peasant
are-
and you are eating gruel.
Yeah.
We do keep Conrad in the basement and feed him gruel. Yes, that's right. We are communists, and
Yeah.
our ideological leader is Caleb Maupin.
We have not escaped the authoritarian accusations.
Someone in chat complimenting my dress. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is my hookup uniform. Okay, should we
Are you just
should we
been
start
at
the
family
show?
Christmas? What's going on there?
Well, I wanted to look nice.
Nice.
Oh,
Let's go.
And by the way, chatters, thank you for letting me know about the buzzing. We're gonna get this figured out one way or the other. Conrad will start producing the show in the new year, probably. So, like, hopefully,
We'll take his
Conrad's
gruel away.
or we'll take his gruel away from him.
Well, Conrad is actually in chat right now, I believe, under the new Red Planet Twitch channel. So you can go and follow that channel, Red Planet Live. There it is. Feed me. Where Conrad has said, feed me in parentheses.
We should
Conrad,
probably
gruel.
give them a VIP or something.
And yeah, I'll listen, folks. I'll run the stream next week. It's fine. You know what I mean?
I won't be able to make it anyways next week, so it's
Okay,
probably
yeah.
for the best then.
So there you go.
I
There
have
you
to.
actually go.
I have to be with my family for family stuff. So
Crims.
Oh, being with your family.
It's the
couldn't be me.
season.
Crims. So
thank
welcome
you, Vera, for
everybody.
gifting a sub to Red Planet Live. I appreciate it, and for gifting 2 subs before that. Thank you.
Brilliant. There you go.
I have a
welcome in.
question though.
Sorry,
Go
I'm
on.
on
quite
my.
curious.
Go ahead, Sophie.
No, I have a question. It's an important question. It's Mule.
Uh-huh.
What was the most base thing you did this week?
Oh fucking hell! Listen, why are you starting with me? Right, okay. I've done loads of base stuff this week. That's why, But I guess I'm proud to talk about it. I basically organised last minute a protest in solidarity with London Renters Union. It was me and 2 other organisers from Greater Manchester Tenants Union. We took part yesterday in the National Day of Action against evictions, rent rises, and profiteering buy-to-let landlords, which is actually what we're going to be talking about today.
Wow.
The protest went really well despite us organising it very last minute, and a lot of the members showed up, and we actually were filmed and interviewed by some people from a production company who are making a documentary called Evicted. So I'm going to be on BBC 3 apparently.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good job.
along with some of the other comrades who were there that
That's
day.
the 3rd highest BBC.
It's the 3rd highest BBC. That's right. Yeah, level 3 on the
That's how that works.
on the
Yeah,
stoned
level 3.
level.
It's like Super Saiyan level 3, but
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
just more boring, I guess.
Mhm. And then alongside that, after that, I went with my friends to watch an amazing performance by Dan Dorr. Dan Dorr is a queer disabled guy who his show is all about breaking down the boundaries of disability, breaking down perception of disability and perception of queerness within disability. and it was absolutely amazing. Room full of radical queers, all crying, standing ovation at the end of it. Really, really highly recommend that everybody checks out Dan Door. It was a really moving show. Lot of kink in it though. If that's something that's not for you, you know, maybe sit out of that one. But it is a really awesome show that's sort of like.
So what's his name? Dan Door.
Dan Door. Dan space DAW. Yeah, and he's on.
Door.
Yeah, like, he's on. He's on Twitter as Dan Door Creative, I think.
Wait, how's it spelled? How's the last Door?
DAW.
Daw?
Yeah, literally like Dan Daw, like digital audio.
But it's pronounced door.
No, it's not pronounced door. It's pronounced door. What? How? Am I going to let Dan Door through the door? Yes, I am. I'm going to let Dan Door in the door. That's how English works for me personally. So there you go. Yeah, Shafiq is right in the chat. That's how you spell it. There you go. Yes. I don't know if it's Dan _ on Instagram, but it's definitely Dan Door Creative. But yes, a very funny Doc Watson PhD in the chat. Or Nora, my door is open. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's bruv.
That sounded almost Australian, actually.
No, that's because that's the joke that chatter did. That's a joke that's going around about how people speak in Australia. So there you go. Anyway, that's the most base thing that I did. Drum roll, Tim.
Probably this week would be I did some artwork for something that's going to be in the news a little bit later.
Ooh.
That ended up not being needed for a good reason. So yeah. There's we'll talk about it in the news a little bit later, but there's like ongoing thing that's been going on for years and years, like a developer trying to build on some on a Maori burial ground, and it's been going on for years and stuff, but yeah, we'll cover that further in the news later.
That's some Israeli level bullshit.
It like literally like happens all the time down. So
oh my god! God!
Which is like, you know, terrible, but it's yeah. But we'll revisit that again in a minute. But yeah, I did some stuff for them, and then they were like, "Oh, actually, I don't think we're going to need it," which is a good thing. So
nice.
Yeah, cool. So what about my good friend Kira? What was the most base thing you did?
Most base thing I did this week was probably yesterday. I hung out with my friend Nicotine. She's a streamer here on Twitch. Nikatine. Can we get a shout out for her, please? She's one of my very good friends. I was a huge, she's great. I was a huge fan of her for a very long, and I still am, but now she's one of my closest friends, which is like a parasocial dream, you know, it's like I'm living the dream. And I was on her.
That's the progression that all Kira chatters are on, I believe.
Yeah. If you keep donating, you too can become my best friend. That's right.
And if you donate to the Red Planet Patreon, you can become all of our best friends as well. So.
Yeah.
There you go.
The actual sicko mode reward is we say your username is my best friend at the end of every show.
That's right.
Yeah, best friend tier. Best friend mode.
So I was on her stream yesterday, and she was raising money for this charity called Sage, which is I forget exactly what the acronym stands for, but it's basically it's a charity for queer elders, which I think is so fucking cool because first of all, it's for queer people, period, which is like sorely needed, and is it's always a good thing to, especially for people that I guess I am technically queer. I still identify as like being on the outskirts of things, but like
that's right.
Yeah, I guess I'm having that's bisexual doubt, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, whatever. I was on her stream yesterday, and I was helping her to raise money for the charity called SAGE, SAGE. It's an acronym. I forget exactly what it stands for, but that was really cool. And we raised some money, and chatters were great. And I really appreciate y'all for being there. And then afterwards, I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, "Mom, I was on my friend's stream today, and she's a transgender woman who's a lesbian." And my mom was like, "Okay, let me do the math." And then she's my mom, she's a conservative, like,
Yeah.
she's a boomer, but she was really trying. And so she was like working with me. So I was teaching my mom about queer stuff last night. And she was like, okay, thank you for explaining. I'm like, no problem, mom. I'm happy to explain.
It's like she's like got like, it's like she's playing Dungeons and Dragons and she's looking at the character sheet. She's like, all right, so she's a level 5 lesbian.
It gives you a +3 to noise music, I think.
Yeah.
So make sure.
I just communicate everything I need to communicate by wearing secondhand army boots, and people get the vibe.
So if you want to support, and maybe I should find the link that she was using for her stream team called Transmission Gaming, which is like an organization here on Twitch that Nicotine either created or I don't know if she like straight up created it, but it's basically like a trans place or space or queer space for Twitch chatters, streamers, and so on and so forth. It's really cool. And so that's like the organization she was like, using to promote the charity. And so there's that. And then also I can't emphasize enough to please support my friend Nicotine. She's wonderful.
I agree.
Awesome.
I am also a fan of Nicotine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about Sophie? What's the most?
Oh, you know what I've done this week, which is fuck all. The most base thing I did this week was self-care because I have been in a mental health crisis, and I had to be absolutely restrained and beaten with rods into fucking taking care of myself. But I finally did it, and now I've got a nice week coming up this week of gentle, easy plans where I see friends and kiss them on the mouth. No, that's not true. Taking care of myself and being gentle to myself, and that's the base thing I've done this week.
Which,
and
as we discussed, is actually one of the most radical things you can do, isn't it?
Sure, buddy, if you say so.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with this one, but I'm okay.
Yeah, no worries.
I much more prefer when my base thing is like yelling at fascists.
Yeah, for sure. So right, what are we doing? Well, that's a good question, isn't it? What we normally do on Red Planet is we read the news, so we're going to read the news now. Love that. Kira's pissing herself already. That's a great sign.
Your transition.
I've won. This is what I aim to do on every stream. It doesn't matter if it's Red Planet or if it's my own. If I make someone laugh at an absurd thing that maybe they don't fully understand entirely, then that's me done. I've completed the stream. But we're going to read some news, and let's have a look. It's
some
me.
Very good news.
Some great news.
Start off with very good news, chat.
Extremely good news. So you will all remember our cheeky little chatters when we had Huda on from Palestine Action. One of the most based organizations here in the UK. If you don't know already by the name what they do, you can check out our episode where we had Huda on. And
B-Rat, do you know where that episode is?
B-Rat, if you could get that
B-Rat
for
knows.
us,
Of course B-Rat knows.
that would rock. And I think that B-Rat probably does know where that is, and we're going to get it very soon. But yeah, so Huda came on and she spoke to us about all the stuff that Elbit do, and as you can see on the screen in front of you, they throw paint at weapons factories, and not just weapons factories, but they also throw paint at people who invest in weapons factories, banks that give them loans, all that kind of stuff. So really, really awesome organization. And they also do a bit of sabotage in the factories themselves and attempt to occupy them, which is obviously not something that we would recommend here on Red Planet because the law is right and good and we love it and blah, blah, blah. But also, it's just what's going to happen, isn't it? If people understand that imperialism is bad and they want to do something about it, like, if we're talking about the law here, you can understand why people would question, well, why is it not illegal for me to stop people sending weapons to Israel that uses them to kill fucking children? Why is that not illegal? And why is me stopping it illegal? So that's probably what's going through their heads. But the great bit of news,
probably
the Great Britain, just a guess. The Great Britain news there that we've got regarding Palestine Action is that Elbit Systems itself, the group, has been fired from £280 million worth of Ministry of Defence contracts. So if you didn't know previously how Elbit operated, Elbit basically would advertise their their weapons. They would advertise their basically war machines to sell to people as having been tested on Palestinians. That's what they would say, which is an extremely fucked up thing. And of course, this is the rest of the world who buy weapons and military stuff, I guess, from Elbit are turning a blind eye to what's going on in Palestine, and therefore just going, whatever, just buy a bunch of I don't know what they sell. They sell those like awful computer AI drones and shit, don't they? And all that kind of stuff, like really nasty, horrible stuff. So anyway, the UK government has obviously seen the activism that Palestine Action is doing and has gone, you know what? We've already got enough shit with Just Stop Oil. Let's not get these folks mad either, because, otherwise we could kind of escape a little bit of, I guess, resistance here if we just sever all connections with Elbit. Let's not forget that the UK government is, completely in support of Israel as well. They openly are, but I think for some reason they feel it's easier for them to get away with just being passively supportive of the genocide of Palestinians.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Than to actually sort of go, well, there's actually activists here who are very successful, and they do not care
that's
about.
A really good distinction, because the more and more you make it apparent to everyone that this is actually happening, the more it looks like the UK government is like actively playing a role, like they're actively making the decision versus like, it just happens. How like so much horrible stuff happens in this world, or people do horrible things, and then but it just manages to just be part of like the noise, just the regular buzz of the background. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is clearly not a buzz in the background. If this with all this activists like protesting, I guess you can call this protesting, right?
That's exactly what it is. It's an action in sort of support in order to highlight the protest of the treatment of Palestinians. So a couple of cool points about this. Shortly after the announcement of the now cancelled contract from Ministry of Defence Procurement Minister Alex Chalk, 9 activists from Palestine Action barricaded themselves inside Elbit offices in Bristol and destroyed property. So, again, not going to say well done for breaking the law, but, I can understand why they would do this. Why would you sort of just stop going as hard as you are on a company like this just because the Ministry of Defence have dropped their contracts? If anything, this is the time to get them when they're weak, I would imagine, is what they're thinking, right? So, I understand.
I would imagine.
As much as we're against broken windows and paint on bricks here on the planet, we're also very much against obliterating children.
Yeah, right.
For profit.
Yeah,
so you can.
I would say
that's just our commentary. We're just gonna, make what you want with that.
Yes. Some other break-ins have been performed at Elbit and partner facilities more than 100 times in a little over 2 years, despite increased spending on site security. Again, I think that kind of speaks to what we've been saying about cops in general and how cops will respond to the revolution and the sort of morale, especially because, these are security, quote unquote, security services. But they're essentially cops. They're cops who are, I guess, I don't know, contractors, right?
I mean, if you think about what a cop is really, like, what is a cop doing? Is you know,
and of course they were
protecting capital at the expense of human beings,
Yes, exactly. And I think that, this sort of speaks to what we were saying, which has been repeated. Well, it's been observed throughout history, which is that when revolutionary sort of action happens, people who are paid to fight against that sort of see what they're fighting against 9 times out of 10, because when they go there, they're like, oh, what are these guys actually doing? And someone's like, oh, well, they're trying to protect the genocide of literal indigenous people and their children.
Yeah.
And then they go, damn, that's, oh, well, I better punch them all, I guess, and they're eventually, their morale is going to flounder. It's going to, they're going to be fucked eventually. And, they're just not going to do their jobs properly.
That with, at Iamato, there was so many, all the security companies ended up just dropping off because the employees, the security guards were like predominantly like Maori and Pacifica. So when they were like showing up to kind of like you know, like work for developers to push Maori people off their land, they were kind of like, wait, this is kind of fucked up.
Yep.
So they all started dropping off, and some of them even joined the protest. So they started kind of like finding more and more kind of desperate workers to do it, to the point where they were like hiring people that were like, there was a lot of like fresh immigrants, like Indian dudes and stuff, that couldn't really speak English, didn't really know what they were showing up for. And so they showed up to Yamato to work, and the company was really shit. They just kind of like left them there. They were just like, okay, you guys have to be here basically 24/7. And there was like a shack on site, but they were like, this is your office sort of thing. And a bunch of the protesters found them there, like just on the grounds, and they were like, hey, what are you guys doing? You like living in here? And they were just like these guys that could barely speak English, that were just kind of like hired, you know, on the spot or whatever, and they had no idea what was up. So they kind of talked to them and stuff, and the protesters ended up kind of like giving them food and water and like helping them out with stuff.
Christ.
And so these guys were just like, we're not gonna stop you from doing anything. Like,
That's incredible.
You care about us a lot more than our employers do.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, that was the thing, right? It was like, well, we have more in common with you than with,
that's so cool.
That's the important realization, isn't it? I mean, the big problem we encounter with reaching that same point in the UK, or have done so far, this is a really encouraging change, is British brain, which is fundamentally built on cop brain, right? Like when Huda was on the show, she was talking about how Elbit had to like let a lot of employees go because they were all getting uncomfortable with exactly this situation. And they wind up like, everything's automated. There's like one guy in the factory just watching a bunch of drones make drones, and he's like ex-military, like he's just a fascist. Like they found like an awful dude, like an actual James Bond villain, who's just like, I will watch the machines make the machines that kill the children. And then he's the guy that they can't get to. Also, it reminds me of when we spoke to Alex from the London Macnavists. Me and Mule spoke to Alex, and he was saying that the bailiff company that they got to evict the Macnavists the first time was a specific company who were like really proud of the fact that what they mostly do is evict protesters, squatters, and travelers from
that's what they advertise on their website.
On their website, they're like, we evict protesters, squatters, and travelers, and it's like, okay, so you're just scum. It's awesome. But I mean, it's really cool that like, basically like to reach that point with this, because it's a problem that British people are British. This is I was gonna expand on that, but I actually stand by the statement. It's a problem that British people are British. That's it. It's full stop, done. You can quote me on that.
That's right. That's right. So just continuing the final little bits of this, in a related story, members of Palestine Action, dubbed the Kingston Five, were acquitted last week in a London court on charges of conspiracy to commit criminal damage following an action involving protesters. Defacing
and that means that they're innocent, which means that the law has decided that what they did was good.
Yes.
And so
therefore we get to advocate for it.
Based. Extremely cool.
Everything
that they did.
That the law is the arbiter of morality now.
Extremely good, and I love what they did.
We always did.
I always loved what they did. Because I always knew it was good before the law even did, because I studied the law so closely.
We knew it was going to happen. So meanwhile, Palestine Action are, of course, continuing to expand their actions against organizations associated with Elbit. On December 3rd, which was yesterday, activists targeted the offices of a commercial law firm, MLL Legal, which represents Elbit, smashing windows with hammers and covering the building front in more red paint. The red paint, by the way, is supposed to sort of signify a river of blood, representing the amount of Palestinians who've lost their lives as part of the, not just the what Elbit's doing, but the entire genocide, the Nakba and everything. So there you go. That is the first news story of the week, and the next.
Good job, Peanut. Very proud of you. Let me tell you all about the next news story. It's about the railroad strike.
Yes.
It's about our Yankee cousins getting on with some base shit. We've talked a bunch about the RMT and the rail strikes in the UK, and I don't think that this story has nothing to do with how cool the RMT are. Up the RMT. Shout out to my lads. But let's talk about the US instead.
Mhm.
So in the US, a rail strike is now looming. It'll have a bit of a different impact because of how fucked used trains are. You don't, like, we have good trains that we do rely on, even if they're too expensive. I'm not saying this will be less impactful, but basically, workers have been forced to accept a contract which has been negotiated with rail companies by congressional action. So, like, Biden said that he is a Labor president on the side of Labor, and
he said that a bunch of times, right?
Yeah, and then completely, totally in line with that statement, he forced them to accept a contract using the mechanisms of government. It's almost as if the state exists to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class. How weird, how strange.
Has anyone ever talked about that?
Yeah, someone should write something about that, and like, not just that, but also like what we could do or something, like stuff to do.
Like what's to be done?
A to-do
list.
What
is to be done?
I think a list. I think it should be called to do : and that's the name. It's just a bullet point list. Rail strikers, unionized rail strikers in the US have been talking about striking and about trying to have their working conditions improved. A lot of them, they've been without a contract since 2020, demanding pay increases and paid sick leave to provide flexibility in scheduling. The government, their employers, everyone unsympathetic, surprisingly. The US Congress actually has constitutional authority to regulate interstate commerce, and that extends by Supreme Court decision to the ability to intervene in railway disputes, which threaten trade across state lines. This is some of the like incredible federal powers that the US has by being 50 countries that pretend to be one country quite poorly. So basically, that's what they did. The House of Representatives passed 2 bills with a lot of support from Democrats, despite them being the supporters of Labor, apparently. Right. One of the bills was to force workers to accept the contract, and the second was to add 7 days of paid time off, which, just to revisit, they were asking for increased pay, paid sick leave, and flexibility in scheduling, not just 7 days paid time off. And then the Senate voted it through as well, but against the paid time off. So even that little scrap they were trying to feed the workers, the Senate was like, nah, no. In a statement, the Railroad Workers Rank and File Committee called the action completely illegitimate and have stated they reserve the right to organize collective action, which is extremely based. Basically, there will shortly be a big national railroad strike in the US because for all the reasons I just said, and then because the government doesn't exist to help the working class and never will. Cool.
Can I read one of these points that they made, which I love?
Please.
So number 2, and here's the link if anyone wants it for themselves. Number 2, as representatives of rank and file rail workers, we declare that, as far as we are concerned, there is no contract, whether Congress passes legislation or not. Congress, one of the most hated institutions in America, has no rights to override the democratic rights of workers. If the apparatus of the union signs these agreements, they do so in violation of the express will of the rank and file. Therefore, railroad workers reserve the right to organize and prepare collective action.
Thank you for reading that out. That's absolutely
I love
fantastic.
that line.
I really
one of the most hated institutions in America.
I just really like that as like they're basically doing exactly what organized labor is supposed to do. They have their own power, and they're saying, we don't recognize your authority to tell us what to do. We have power now, and as Malcolm X says, power only respects power, right? So they're just like,
this entire
we're
thing
doing
is
what
a banger,
we say. So.
Sorry, this entire thing is a banger. I'm like losing it. Like Biden in Congress is number 4. Biden in Congress cynically claimed that an injunction is needed to spare working people from shortages. But working people don't support an injunction. They support the railroaders.
Absolutely.
They want to join with them in a common fight for decent wages and working conditions. This is what Congress really fears. Yeah.
And this is one of those things that you'll see across the aisle as well. Like you'll even see this among like some of the worst MAGA fascists or whatever, is that like when you get down to issues to do with labor disputes, like in the UK, right, our media works around the clock to like worsen the class warfare and try to convince people in the working class that they should side with the Tories and side with the ruling class and all of this. But like in America, like even if someone's completely in like the QAnon alternate reality, you explain to them like Congress is trying to force these railroad workers to accept a contract they don't want. They're like, fuck that, absolutely not. Time to load my carbine.
Yeah, I've seen some people like, trying to push back on it on Twitter, like these conservatives that would be like, oh, they're greedy, they want like 15 days of sick pay or something like that, and it's like it's just like, it's so deranged.
That's so greedy.
Like, yeah.
They only want to work
350.
They only want to work 350 days out of the year. Fucking lazy ass.
In the middle of an ongoing global pandemic, like who the fuck do they think they are?
And the cost of living crisis and a recession.
Right.
It's like they just get pushed to like defend the most ridiculous things. But it is wild how both. It was Biden saying he's the Labour president, and there's all all of like, I mean, all like AOC and stuff voted to try and block the strike. It's like, it was
Rashida was the only one that didn't, right? Wasn't she the only one?
I think so. Yeah, but it's like, it's pretty wild. It's it's like the thing that people always say. It's like once people get involved in establishment politics, that's that's where they're going to stay.
So AOC is claiming
dropping something in on our text chat for
okay
for this discussion.
So Chad, what we're talking about is how the squad voted, except for Rashida Tlaib, the squad voted against or voted for congressional intervention, essentially in the to force a contract. And so AOC is claiming on Twitter that like she was instructed by the union to do this or something.
No, is she?
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
Ooh.
What the fuck?
And she's like, these are the people that I've been working with. They told me to do this and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like.
So she's on about the police unions, right? That's what the police union told her to vote for. That's what she means by that.
I mean, we can have a whole conversation about like, what not all unions are created the same, right? There's different types of unions. There's unions that are much more bureaucratic and much more like hierarchical than other unions. And so I don't know the nature of the union that she's discussing, if the leadership is like completely in another universe than like the rank and file, like actual members of the union. Yeah, she's saying the union leadership told her to do this. Union leadership often wants to have low strike records to show how good they are at negotiating, but in reality, they pressure ranks and rank and file to vote yes. Oh,
exactly. That's why I was saying about the rank and file committee.
She also said something about like trying to take it, like push it to the Senate, so the Senate had to decide on it or something. Like, what the fuck?
It's almost as if like a kind of a bourgeois element infiltrating unions and controlling them just makes them toothless garbage and completely spineless. And we need some kind of like workers like council or like workers.
What do they call that in Russia? Is it like Soviet?
That is what it's called. That's so funny. That's such a funny word. I've never heard it before, but I like it a lot. Anyway, I like when workers democratically decide amongst themselves what to do. It's very cool. Kira, do you want to tell me about Schatzi Weisberger?
Oh yeah. Yes, I do actually.
It was like a quick pivot from like.
Sorry, I was like thinking about what you just sent me, and I just got, I'm a bimbo. Schatzi Weisberger, she is an extremely based woman who died a few days ago. She died at age 92. Let me pull up on screen. So. It says that Weisberger was a fixture in the New York protest scene, often went viral for her protest signs. I don't know if I can literally read this one out loud, but you can read it yourself. 92-year-old lesbian. Saying fight like hell, love each other harder.
I love the Twitch terms of service. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
So she's anti-Zionist Jew, lesbian, abolitionist, nurse, lifelong organizer, and I believe and not only she's a nurse, I think she's like pretty instrumental in the AIDS crisis. Just like an extraordinarily based woman who died recently, and she said that I think people were organized a GoFundMe to support her in her like last days. Said, thanks in large, like Schatzi was in her own home when she died, exactly according to her wishes. Thanks in large part to the support this community showed her by donating and sharing her GoFundMe. A caption on Jewish Voice for Peace, NYC's Instagram stated, she said over and over that she felt utterly surrounded in love. In her own words this past week, I'm dying, yet this is the best time of my life. I thought it'd be really cool to share this woman's legacy very briefly, at the very least, just to show it's just goals, you know, like I don't know about you, but sometimes, especially in winter, things get depressing. You have to think about your life and to think about things like this.
Yeah.
And like, what kind of
I don't
legacy
have to
do you
think.
want?
You can't make me.
Like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? And I think that this is an incredible legacy that Schatzi is left. And I just wanted to briefly mention her and to celebrate her. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Schatzi
that's awesome.
Weisberger.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I like that, you know,
Husker
slogan.
Sorry, Husker is the one who sent me this, by the way. And Husker says, for the past, Husker is also an anti-Zionist Jew. Husker says, for the past 10 years or so, she's been a death counselor too, helping older people and their families prepare for the grief of loss. That's part of why she's been so prepared for this. Wow, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that, you know, that slogan is really important, right? It's literally like, fight like hell, love each other harder.
Mm-hmm.
Because it kind of, you know, reminds everybody that what we're doing is based in love and compassion again, rather than just, you know, fight like hell is important, but it's also important to love each other, you know, a lot stronger all the time.
Look at this.
100%.
You know?
Look at this. She said, Weisberger got her start in advocacy by opposing redlining and then nuclear technology. In June 2020, she broke curfew to attend a Black Lives Matter protest. That same month, she wrote a column for Huffington Post and said that all she wanted for her 90th birthday was the abolishment of police.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, she's so cool.
Yeah,
Base
that's
granny.
fucking
Base granny. Anyways,
Base granny.
Wow, what a life.
Awesome.
What a life.
Awesome.
I believe Tim wanted to tell us about some more news.
Oh yeah, cool. So this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier. So there has been this thing. It's been going. Oh man, I think it started in like 2014 now. But it is so down at the down south. Well, the southern end of the North Island. There's been a thing going on for a long time, a place called Opihi Whanangakore, which is an urupa, which is like a burial ground. And it's like, it's a coastal burial ground, which is, so those are the oldest ones that we have. This is in New Zealand, this is Maori, by the way, to people that, you know, haven't seen me stream before. So it's about 800 years old. And so when the first wave of Polynesian migration came down to Aotearoa, all of the graveyards that they made were around the coast. And so this is one of the last remaining actual coastal graveyards from that initial migration. It's it was by the land, well, where the settling of one of the canoes that came over Matatua, that's like kind of where they settled. And since then, from that point onwards, every chief has been buried there.
Wow.
From the descendants of Matatua, which is largely Ngāti Awa, which is like the bigger tribal group. So yeah, forever. Yeah, it's been a sacred spot forever. So since about 2014, so the land around it now is council owned, and this is, you know, because of various kind of things over the years. Like it was a long time ago, there was some kind of like, I can't remember exactly how it worked, but the council was able to confiscate the land. Well, the government was able to confiscate the land through it was some deal with land rates and stuff like that. I can't remember exactly the deal, because it's a little bit different wherever you are in New Zealand, the various ways that the government was able to confiscate land. And so so they took most of the land aside from like the core part of the burial ground. And so the land all around it now, they've been trying to develop it for like years now, since I think 2014 is when the initial contracts were drawn up. So they're selling it to this developer, MMS, who have been trying to, I think they're calling it like the Marina District or something like that. they want to basically renovate this whole kind of section of land. So there's a marina, a retirement home, a giant housing subdivision, like you know, kind of like a retail area, all that kind of stuff, like an entire kind of thing, which, you know, normally anywhere else would be great because we need, like, you know, we're in the middle of a housing crisis, all this kind of stuff like that. But when it's like a private developer doing it on sacred land, it's like, okay, that's obviously not great.
Yeah.
And also there's like a lot of stuff around there with not just with the burial ground, but like the kind of the plants that grow in the dunes there, the pingal, which are like kind of like a dune grass that is like holds a very like kind of special place to a lot of tribes, because it kind of like is what stops the sea and the land kind of like eroding into each other, and there's kind of like a spiritual significance to that between the two domains. But so there's a lot of stuff going on, and like Ngāti Awa have always been like, you know, this is disrespectful, we don't want you to build this, because, you know, this is kind of like they're talking about literally building up to the border of like a very small area that is like the area in the middle is designated as like the burial ground, but the entire area is a kind of sacred area, you know. So they've been fighting this for years and years and years, and this was basically, next week was their last legal chance. Like, it wasn't their last chance, but it was their last legal one,
right?
Before it would have kicked off, you know, like Martel style, because that's exactly what happened then. You know, like people ran out of actual kind of like legal recourse, so they just started occupying the land.
Yeah.
And people have already been doing that. People have been camping out, and there's been a lot of kind of grassroots organizing around this, and it has really ramped up over the last sort of year or so, where a lot more people have been getting involved. And I think it is also kind of like, you know, seeing Martel and seeing the mobilization there and what was possible really opened the door for things like this. People organizing via social media to kind of not just get the word out there, but to actually physically mobilize people to come to the site and everything like that. So yeah, so they were getting ready for this last hearing, and so people were, you know, posting up a storm, people were organizing, people were already kind of, because Martel came together really because people, instead of just showing up, people worked together and actually kind of built a, they called it the Kaitiaki village, which was like, you know, they planned for a long-term occupation, like they were setting up generators and everything like that. And so that's basically what was happening. People were like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start, you know, a long-term occupation. And yeah, and so the developers actually went, okay, cool, sweet. Well, you know, we know how that goes, so we're just going to chill.
Awesome.
And so they adjourned the current thing. And what that means, it doesn't mean that the case is closed yet. It means that they're going back to negotiating with Ngāti Awa, and there's a couple other groups. There's like trustees of the actual space, the representatives from the tribe, and then so the tribe is a greater group, Ngāti Awa, and then there's a smaller sub-tribe which is kind of directly more involved. And so they're going back to negotiations with them, which is great, because you know, even forcing them to have to negotiate is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, like actually showing them that they can't just kind of move in and they can't just, you know, set up and build their thing. Like there was a bunch of statements from Ngāti Awa representatives talking about how they were like, regardless of what happened, they would continue to, you know, practice the traditional funeral rites there. And they were like, you know, like we will go through the rich houses and we'll go, you know, like we'll go past the cafes, we'll carry our corpses through there and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the kind of imagery associated with the protest has been focused on the fact that it's a burial ground, you know, and they're calling it, well, there's like one phrase that I really like that was on a lot of stickers. I'll put the sticker in the in our chat, and maybe you can bring it up. But it's coastlands is ghostlands is what they are saying.
Nice.
And so there's like a lot of these little ghosts that people were like drawing on everything, putting on stickers all around the place. And yeah, so that was kind of the vibe. So I think it's it's pretty good. Like, I think I love the idea of that, where it's like, it is kind of funny and it is kind of like, and it's clever as well, the way that it rhymes and stuff. Yeah. But it's also, it's like, this is exactly, you know, like it kind of explains it all, right? Like the coast, like those coastal burial grounds, you know, like ancient, they're some of the most ancient kind of signs of civilization, you know, in Aotearoa, because they date back to the first migrations. And there's not that many of them left, and yeah, and you're cursed, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go on a little sticker tangent and just say I remembered something that I did actually do more than just taking care of myself this week, which was because I was stickering. I just wanted to say, like, stickering seems like a really small thing, but like I noticed this week the places where I've been stickering, some other people have started putting up other leftist stickers there as well. And I think that like it shouldn't be underrated that like when you put up stuff visibly, publicly, that people can see, like people in this area are saying they support this thing. Other people come out and are like, yeah, I support that thing too. And like, you know, kind of especially like anonymously, people can just be like, yeah, I support that thing. It's actually based. And then you'll find out the community is all together on it.
There was a while back where I started seeing a bunch of turf stickers going up around, like just the route that I used to walk home. And so I started peeling them off and just printing out, like, you know, like just dumb little memes on sticker paper and just putting them back. And then, yeah, I did it like, you know, like a couple of days a week or whatever, every now and then. And then eventually I just found that there were these other ones around there, and I was like, I haven't done any of these. Like this is someone else that's come by. And then I noticed around like further up the street and on the other side streets and stuff, and I was like, fuck yeah, that rules.
I still need to get my handle on some adult human feline stickers that I will be doing soon.
One that I was doing was just the it was like the meme about the Minecraft bee being trans.
Oh yes. Yes, that's a good one.
All right, hang on. Oop.
I love the little ghost. That's such a cute little ghost.
Yeah, no, it's a great ghost.
But I'm just blown away, like you're saying, like the, you know, Iumato has like had such a deep effect that people are scared to even start engaging in that kind of conflict.
Yeah. It's like I think the key thing is being able to show that you could bring that there, you know, like that you could mobilize that same energy. I don't think that it having happened by itself is enough, but to show that it could happen again is really important.
In Aotearoa, we're building land power and sea power. In Britain, we will need to build meme power.
Yeah, we're building ghost power down here. So why don't we Mule, why don't we
make Mule tell us the next story? You mean? Yes, I will do that.
Yeah, that was my segue, but I was like really typing at the same time.
I mean, we'll probably all have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, listen, it's that one. You all know what's happened. It's all over Twitter. It's all over every single political streamer. You know, Sam Sader, he's done loads of stuff about this week. I've been watching it. It's Ye. He is a Nazi now, and that's it. That's the story. It sucks. It's really bad. Ye is obviously like a huge public figure.
Kanye West is, in case you don't know.
Formerly Kanye West, if people don't know.
You know, so if you know, he's got a lot of fans. He's also running for president. If you're not aware of Ye's kind of political past, like he's already ran for president once before, and he's been courted by the far right a lot. And, you know, something that I've seen on Black Leftist Twitter is that it's like, well, look, you know, he's being exploited. He's saying the things that these white Nazis would never, ever say. And so they're sort of like getting him on and sort of making a fool of him. But at the same time, kind of like they're kind of pretending to make a fool of him. Like I've seen the video of Alex Jones with him on the show being like, whoa, wait, let me stop you there. Actually, no, I disagree. Hitler wasn't a good man. But like, you know, it's kind of like, he's kind of taking the piss a little bit. He's kind of being like, you're going a bit far there, buddy, but you know, I agree with you in most 90% of what you're saying. 90% of what he's saying is like extremely anti-Semitic stuff. So
I mean, he's denying the Holocaust. He's like, I want to say we should probably explicitly focus on the fact that like Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos and a whole bunch of like just Nazis are like around him right now and like steering him through what they want him to do. Like I think that also like he went on Tim Pool's show earlier in the week, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That's
think a
very
really
funny
significant
footage.
thing here. Yeah, it is funny. Like he walks off because Tim Pool is like gives him the slightest pushback of like maybe we don't hate all Jews or something.
Yeah.
But like but I think it's really worth saying that not only is like it a huge opportunity for the like publicizing and sharing of like Nazi ideas and talking points that he's running for president. He's this huge public figure. He's got these Nazis running his like presidential campaign, but also like Tim Pool would not have had Nick Fuentes on before. I'm pretty sure he's never had him on before. Like Tim Pool is a far right dickhead. His whole brand is like he's actually a liberal and the left moved away from him, and you know that whole classic shtick, right? But like
Dave Rubin stuff,
yeah, exactly, right. But I think it's really relevant to say like within the right wing, the far right media sphere, there are shows that like people like Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos, like Holocaust denying, full on Nazis, advocating for a white ethno state, publicly saying like horrific things, but then saying like I'm also not saying what I completely believe because I can't say that yet. Like these are the kinds of things they say. These guys like actually can't get on like Tim Pool and other shows that like trade on respectability on their own, right? And so it's really relevant that like because they have seized control of Kanye West's whole public, you know, Ye's whole public thing, they are able to ride that ticket through like anything. Like they are now like
absolutely
getting all of these publicity.
Even just like those photos of them like on the plane with him and stuff. That's like that's huge. But it's like so. I mean, we were talking about it before. It's like Kanye is saying what, like he is in the, you know, the depths of a manic episode, saying the things that those people believe when they are just like 100%, you know, clear-headed,
flying
sober,
high,
raw dog in reality, you know. So I think that's like it's worth noting that it's like, you know, like it's really easy to like, you know, laugh and be like, oh yeah, he's like, you know, he's out of it or whatever like that. But it's like the people in his room like take that shit very seriously, and that's why they don't say the quiet part loud, because they actually have like an ideological and like political project attached to it, whereas like he's just saying things, you know.
Yeah, it fucking sucks.
But
do
this real fast. All right, thanks. Okay, go ahead.
So after he appeared on Tim Pool and, like Sophie said, just stormed out like a just like a child, really, sort of like, you know, Tim Pool literally like, maybe we don't hate all Jews, that's a bit much. Obviously,
well, actually, you know, it's kind of it's even more cynical than that. Sorry, I'm just speaking from like I watched way too much of this stuff. It's my mental health has been good this week. On the Tim Pool podcast, no one in chat tell me, I don't care what the fuck his show is called, I don't remember. On the pool floater show, I don't know, it was very clear that Pool was trying to be like, we are going to have a second half of this conversation behind a paywall.
Yes.
So if you want to come hear the other bit of the conversation, you have to pay and be a member.
He
which, like,
does that all the time.
You know, a classic move. And like it's I'm sure that if Ye had played ball for the rest of the interview, they would have just had their entirely horrifically anti-Semitic conversation just like behind the paywall. But Tim Pool was basically like, let's not do that right this second. Ye couldn't wait for like a minute and just like stop. He was like, no, I have to say I hate the Jews now.
Literally,
like, hold it in for just a minute. But
I think Alexandra is a great comment saying that he's bringing back every alt-right shit stain that disappeared 5 to 4 years ago and making them national figures with his A-list status. It doesn't feel like something leaked. Like there was a leak in like there is like a barrier that's supposed
like
to
exist spilling over into each other.
Right. There's like now it's like your mom's gonna hear about Nick Fuentes. Like that's not okay. That's really not okay.
It's really important that she hears full context as well. This is something that like a lot of people are pointing out, like Jimmy one of the Jimmys on the late night shows with the face and the suit, you know, the one,
One of them.
like mentioned
Oh,
Nick
yeah.
Fuentes and like played a clip of him saying that like having sex with women is gay and like laughed at him, but didn't mention that he's like a fucking Holocaust
He's a
denier
literal
and a full-on Nazi, like a
Textbook
Nazi,
Like
like a
a-
card-carrying Nazi, like an
Yeah.
evil
Like a
piece of shit,
Hail
and like
Hitler, Richard
didn't say any of that
Spencer-y
shit. He was just
Nazi.
like, who is in charge of Kanye's campaign now?
Yeah,
Oh, this
Kimmel.
guy who seems kind of stupid is basically all the point he was really making.
Yeah. Like
And
the
then just
silly,
moved
goofy
on.
guy.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah,
Yeah.
That-
Also,
that was
one
infuriating.
thing, one thing I feel like is like missing from this. There's like a lot of people online that are like making these posts about like, hey, I'm mentally ill and I'm not, racist or anything like that, which is like, I think is like really actually damaging to public discourse around mental health, because it's like we were talking about before the show. It's like,
Thank you.
fucking, okay, cool.
Thank
You're
you.
mentally ill and you've never scared your friends and family. Like, fucking, I hope they pick
God,
you.
I wish
you
that
know,
were
like-
me.
There's so much wrong with that discourse because it like chalks up all mental illness to depression and anxiety, not
Right,
like
right,
delusional
right.
states. Not
Yeah.
they're like, well, I have blah blah, and I've never said anything positive about the Nazis. It's like, okay.
But
Yeah,
people
yeah.
find
There's
it
a lot
really
I've
easy
met
to
mentally
talk
ill people
about.
that think they're Jesus Christ. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah. There's a
literally,
lot-
what are you
I mean,
talking about?
Yeah.
There's a lot wrong with online discourse around mental health. Like before I found out that I am autistic, like I do remember someone calling me neurotypical because I wasn't autistic. Like they really used, like a lot of the time people narrow down
Oh
like
my God.
if you have autism or ADHD, that's neurodivergence, and then like anything else is
Yep.
a neurotypical person.
Yep.
And it's
Yeah.
like, no, mental health is a
no.
complicated
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
vast, there's a whole, there's a
complicated
reason
thing.
psychiatry and psychology is like such a big,
Yeah.
area of academia and learning, because there's so much to be learned all the time, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of people that are kind of like, saying like, oh, this, like this, he's unwell now, so he is just saying all the stuff that he has like kept in secret or anything like that. And I think that like whenever you're talking about someone who is having a manic episode like this, like you can't really you can't make a claim like that.
No.
You get like, I mean, and sometimes that is true, sometimes it's not. You just it's just better not to make any claims like that, because like I've had friends that have had manic episodes and believed all kinds of wild stuff without having like some of the alt-right's kind of like golden boys whispering in their ears, so
well, I think, sorry to cut you off, but like I do think that it's really important for us to look a little bit like the cult tactics as well, because like if someone's in this like manic state and they already Ye is prone to like just declaring himself the second coming of Jesus Christ, and that's very much like a part of what he's doing right now. Like he was part of his like saying he loves Hitler, he's saying it within like, I love everyone and every human being is good, and then he goes on to say a bunch of like Nazi talking points, right? Like Hitler invented highways. No, he didn't. Hitler invented the microphone and the Volkswagen, and no, he didn't. He didn't do any of those things.
He didn't do any of that.
And then like denying the Holocaust and this shit, right? But I think it's crucial to see that the way that like that stuff is fitting into his like manic like belief in himself as the second coming of the Messiah, and like this is love bombing. Like this is people using like positive affirmation and telling him that. So it's like all these people are now like baffled as to why like the overwhelming mass of people in the world being like, hey, dude, stop saying you love Hitler. That's not cool. Is not getting through to him. And it's like, well, it's not getting through to him because the act of seeing everyone is against him is actively reinforcing like the dynamic going on here. Like the people who are telling him the talking points around it that like fit into, you're Jesus loves everyone, so you love all people on earth, even Hitler, and people are lying about Hitler and he did all these great things. Like that's what they're constructing around him, right? And like actually the mass of people being like, don't love Hitler, Hitler is bad, which should be an obvious statement, like because of love bombing, because of this cult tactic. Like that's what it's like. I tweeted this in the week, like my my hope, but I'm not really optimistic this will happen, is that like people will understand a little bit more of how love bombing works and how like cult tactics, especially around political viewpoints, because like conservatism is not like an ideology. It's just like, it's at best like a personality type. Like it's just like a kind of dude who loves how things were and not how things will be. And like,
and doesn't even fully understand what things were in most cases.
Of course, yeah, no, of course not. Like relies on a lot of lies about how things were. But like,
yeah, go ahead.
But like that's, you know, that all relies on being told constantly by other people who are like that. Like everyone who's yelling at you because you're wrong isn't yelling at you because you're wrong. They're yelling at you because they're wrong and because they can't handle the truth. And it's like this entire system of conservatism, from the most bland conservatism all the way to Nazi shit, is this same like cult tactic. And the barrier between like obvious observable reality and conservative beliefs is reinforced by the like
really
weaponizing of people explaining the way that you're wrong in order to say like, look how much they're against you, that's because they hate the truth. I just really hope that this gets out more, like more people understand the dynamic that's at play here, because like
I think that's a much more nuanced, informed way to look at this, instead of being like, I hate the whole like this person's evil and I'm good, and that's just the way that the lines are drawn, and
we're just going to focus entirely like individualistically. But I really want people to like see that,
I like this,
that what's happening with Ye is the same thing that, like, you know, you all just had Thanksgiving, we're about to have Christmas. Like it would really, I think I just have this like very naive, it will not happen, but this hope that like some people will look at what's happening with Ye, look at these two like Nazis like puppeteering him around like Weekend at Bernie's, and then look at their like racist uncle at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, and be like, this is happening because he has other people in his life who are telling him this stuff over and over again, the same as Ye. And that's why it's a social dynamic. Like there isn't actually like, there is some value in like debating and like, in like, you know, discussing with your family, and like trying to like debate them out of whatever points, but the value is in like the social element, you know, like the value is in like showing them that you are dedicated to like how much you believe they are wrong, and hopefully like your relationship will be stronger than their social pressure. But like you have to understand that it's social pressure. Like really this is something that liberals fall prey to all the time, because they think that they live in a world that's based on like evidence and facts. It's definitely a thing that like socialists fall prey to, because like we have an we have an ideology that's based in like kind of an economic science, and like and so like we're just like, well, if we can just prove to people that the science says communism is good, then they will stop believing the bad thing. And it's like, no, like they have people around them all the time telling them that observable reality is not true.
I see this happening right now. We're so over time. Today's episode's wild. This is a wild episode. I see this happening with Tara Reid. So she accused Biden and I believe her, wholeheartedly believe her, of sexually assaulting her when she was an intern for him. And she has fallen so far into like I've seen her like with the Maupin crowd. I've seen her now, like now she's adding Elon Musk and thanking him for speaking truth to power and things like this.
No, 100%. I didn't touch on this in Conspiracy on the Left. I've been aware of her the whole time, but like I didn't touch on this because like I did not want to drag the like attention onto her as like a survivor who's accused the sitting president.
100%. And like I have a lot of sympathy for her, like a lot, because and this is something that I've discussed before on Twitter, when like way long ago, when I was like feeling really isolated as a woman who was trying to like you know, on the left, feeling like all this sexist, like just there's a lot of sexism on the left. There's a lot of sexism on the left. There's a huge lack of feminism on the left. And when I remember when I spoke out about it, I got a lot of like hatred for it. And then I found this one woman on Twitter. I forget her name. Oh my God. Mraz. So there's this one Twitter account, Mraz. I believe she's like a lib, but she's very much a feminist. She has a literally amazing feminist things to say. And she's helped inspire me to like you know, feel more empowered. And I think has a lot of value.
I've been through the same thing. I did follow Emraz for a while. I will say, like, her lib takes have overridden, I think.
I can
like
totally respect that. Totally respect
but I had
that.
the same thing where I was like, holy shit, finally a feminist leftist for a little while.
It wasn't even like a feminist, it wasn't even that. The reason I'm telling you this is that, like, I felt so alienated because I'm like, listen, y'all are yelling at me for following Emraz and finding what she's saying to be inspirational as a woman. It's the reason I have to follow her is because you aren't providing me this. I'm not seeing anyone provide me this information. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of tearing down women. I'm seeing a lot of like calling me a Karen whenever I'm like, hey, stop sexually harassing me on Twitter. I see a lot of that shit. And like, here's what the moral of the story is. If you're in need of support, you're going to have to find it somewhere. And I don't think Tara Reid has felt like she's probably seen a lot of support from people, maybe like us. Maybe she's found more support from like the Maupin crowd or the Elon Musk crowd or whatever. And so that's why I have a lot of sympathy for her, because I do believe her. I believe she is absolutely a victim of sexual assault by Joe Biden. I believe that she is still being persecuted to this day, like being doxxed on the internet and like constantly being like harassed and persecuted because she spoke out. But, and so I never want to like go scorched earth against her. I'm more disgusted at the scenario. And like, that's why I wanted to bring her up. It's like,
no, absolutely.
The social pressures that you were talking about. It's not an individualistic criticism of her. It's more of like this is what happens. This is what happens when there's like a political naivete. There's like an abyss, right? A void, a need for support, a desperate need for support. And you're going to have to fill that void somewhere.
Yeah, I think that it's like we like, I think the left broadly can often see that like marginalized people are like the best allies to people who are trying to change like the overall system and the overall society that we live in. But like, for whatever reason, no, it's an obvious reason, like male leftists like just find the absolute hardest time is like believing women and like talking about feminism and like engaging in anything to like strip back their misogyny. Like I don't want to discount at all like the amount to which like white leftists just like ignore people of color constantly. That's obviously like a massive problem. But it's just like such a constant revolving thing of like, when it comes to gender, it's just treated as like this like silly, frivolous thing that's like not actually important to any kind of material understanding of the world. But like, fucking read some Marxist feminism, read some Sylvia Federici for fuck's sake, like read some Bell Hooks, read some Donna Haraway, understand the intersections of these things.
I think it speaks a lot to this in that one of my recent videos that some of you may have heard of or seen, I mentioned something called reproductive labor. And a lot of leftists think that that means when you have a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You know,
when you're in labor and producing.
That's when you
and not like
when I'm in labor reproducing.
Yeah, literally, like just the worst.
I've never performed it because I've never had a baby, so I'm good. I'm
good. Speaking of, just briefly, Soph mentioned Donna Haraway. We should do when we set up our Discord and we do screenings and stuff, we should do one of, there's a Donna Haraway documentary that I've been meaning to watch for a while called Storytelling for Earthly Survival, which I think is very on brand for Red Planet.
I'm super down with that.
Mentioning that so that now that I've put it out into the universe, I'll be held accountable for it.
Manifest.
But I wanted to say,
B-Rat's gonna remember it.
I'm still not getting into the details of this because obvious reasons. But like, I mentioned this a little while ago. My like most based thing, I think it was maybe last week. Like going to like an anti-fash action, but like it was specifically the fascists were like people who had like transphobes and like I mentioned like the barely any fucking anti-fascists showed up. And I mean specifically like a lot of trans people showed up and people they could bring showed up, right? But just like anti-fascist organizations who I know operate in London, who I know show up for like every anti-fash action, didn't. And like the person we were opposing, right, like Posey Parker is pals with Tommy Robinson. The like EDL, like white nationalist fascists were like planning to show up at 2 p.m. to like guard her talks, and like they didn't bother to show up because the like response, like the counter demo was so weak. Like they just didn't even bother to show up. But it's like why the fuck don't these anti-fascists like care about this thing, which is demonstrably like a fascist holding a rally in the middle of London? Just because it's like got to focus on attacking trans women, it's like somehow a different thing that doesn't matter. It's like, cool, well, that's how you're just gonna like let fascism just slip through all the cracks. You're just gonna just let like capitalism just keep on like fucking us all into the dirt, and just like let fascism just creep in and just like take over everything, because like it doesn't it's not like broad fascism. It's not Mussolini. It's gender criticals, so it's fine.
I think there's a sort of interesting, like, archaic observation that anti-fascists probably have, because, you know, I don't know if it's just because they are trans-misogynist pieces of shit, or if it's because, you know, I imagine
there's a bit of that going on. There's a bit of that going on.
Exactly.
I'm going to be having, I've said this before, I'm going to be having some strong words when I've got a bit more energy with some people.
Maybe I guess what I was sort of getting at is that like they think that like the real fascism to worry about is that the people that actually just love Hitler, and like not the pseudo fascist sort of crypto fascists, sorry, not pseudo fascists, but crypto fascists who talk about it in a roundabout way, because, you know, the EDL, I guess, is sort of a what would you call it, you know, one that's been, it's like an organization that's been around for a long time, and that's sort of linked with like full on, as you know, we were saying before, like proper Nick Fuentes style Heil Hitler fascists, and not really like a crypto fascist movement. Like a crypto fascist movement was the one that inspired that guy in Portsmouth to shoot a bunch of people because he was an I word. And yeah, so, but I think that's something that's like a huge, anyway, obviously queer issues and specifically trans issues are obviously a massive blind spot for anti-fascist networks, unfortunately. But yeah, it's got to change.
I think people think that it's like something that we focus on a lot because online like trans discourse is big, but like in the real world, like you just see this, like that the organizing is not fucking there. I've been around in some different circuits now for a little while, and like the trans organizing that's trans people like protesting to have our fucking human rights acknowledged and protected is so liberal. It's such a bunch of libs who are like cooperating with the police. And then you have the really like occasional really cool radical stuff. We covered this on the show, like the pissed off T-words, pouring a bunch of bottles of piss outside the HRC. Like that shit's awesome. That was a small action of just like a few people and all trans, right? And then you have like, you know, demos opposing like an open fascist like Posey Parker, and just like the anti-fascists don't show up. And it's just like the real world leftist organizing is not there for queer people, is not there for women, is not there for people of color. And this is how we fuck the entire thing. Like this is how we lose the game, guys. This is how the entire season goes to the fucking fascists. Like,
and another thing that I would
mad as fuck about this.
Another thing that I would say in sort of like using your privilege as like a cis person in order to support trans people is, you know, if you go out there and get involved with an org, you can push for solidarity with trans rights activists. You can push for solidarity.
Like put it on the table, like because you know you'll get like with any kind of org or whatever like that, you know, like you might get them organizing around a particular point or whatever, but like trans or queer issues just might not be on their radar. So it's like, as an ally, you can put it on the radar, you know, like you can bring that to the table.
And
which
also
is,
make it so that solidarity isn't just like a constitutional commitment. You're just like, well, we support trans rights. And it's not just an internal thing where if someone is being really transphobic, you will mediate it and kick that person out maybe, or resolve it, whatever. It's not that. It's when there is a trans rights protest, your organization has their back and shows up for them, you know?
Solidarity can be statements, and that's fine, just like you say, Sophie, but it has to be, you know, building coalitions.
Right?
Well, it needs to be building coalitions with movements as first and foremost, in order to show that actual real solidarity, which is being there and stewarding, you know, protests and just supporting protests.
I'd just go further. Like a lot of leftists just fucking hate women. Just like really fucking hate women. It sucks. It just sucks really fucking bad, and we can do better.
That's right.
No, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah,
I've been like kind of been steering away a bit from intersectionality as a concept, because I think that sometimes, and this gets really deep in the weeds, but I know that AFCO spoke about it in her Racism as a Zoological Witchcraft book, the one that I recommended last time, to discuss how white supremacy is both anti-Black and anti non-human animal. And she discusses in that book like the failure of this like intersectionality model, which like has all these like you're a woman, plus if you're considered a woman when we're talking politically, typically you're considered white. Just automatically. The assumption is you're white. So now you have to add something else to it. And so all these like blocks that are added, she talks about it much more eloquently in her book, but the way that she discusses it, it really does make it clear that the inevitable reality is that what you're discussing, what you're pointing out, Sophie, occurs where people like have this very like modular attitude towards, oh, well, this is this lane and this is that lane, and you might meet in these intersections, but in actuality, it's all one big system. It just happens to rear its head in more obvious ways in certain ways, right? Yeah. Like certain like people get like very overtly genocided, but it's not like that's one particular issue that might intersect with my issue.
Yes.
It's all one fucking issue that pops its head up.
These are all facets of the same hyperobject, right? Capitalism, white supremacy, misogyny, the patriarchy, ableism, saneism, like all of this shit, like the industrial like farming of animals, the alienation from nature, the belief that like we and nature are separate things, the persecution of the indigenous, like all of these are not separate things. They are facets of one big beast.
100%.
And like again, like read some fucking Marxist feminism, like the creation of patriarchy and the actions of colonialism and the industrial revolution and all of this shit it's not like, I can't even say it's interlinked, because that would still imply separate things that touch each other. It's just one organism. It's just one thing. Like you could maybe describe it as like organs of a body, right?
I think
Disturbo says bell hooks. Okay, sorry, I was going to say read Disturbo's comment. Bell Hooks talks about this a lot. She calls it white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, like space time rather than time and space. Okay,
I was actually about to mention Bell Hooks because I watched.
Oh hell yeah!
Well, I've not read Bell Hooks unfortunately, but I watched Ro Ramdin's video, which is literally just called "Men Are Miserable" this week, and it's about Bell Hooks sort of talking about patriarchy makes men miserable, and I think that a lot of men are scared to confront their misogyny. They're scared to confront their patriarchal enabling that the stuff that they enable within the patriarchy, and they don't realize that if they read something like Bell Hooks, I can't remember exactly which book it is, but I think it's the one that Disturbo is talking about here, where you will actually find that there's a lot of stuff for men to learn about ourselves in that. Ro cites a lot of quotes from The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity and Love by Bell Hooks. That's the one. That's the one.
Okay. I found the quote, and I'm going to quickly do a quick volume or audio thingy. Just been a while. I found the quote because B-Rab posted it in my Discord a while back. I want to read it from Racism as a Zoological Witchcraft by AFCO. For true liberation, I do not encourage intersectional or interdisciplinary thinking. I encourage undisciplinary thinking. The only way forward is to transcend disciplinary logic. The disciplines themselves, race, gender, class, etc., are already infected with coloniality. The social categories were born out of an oppressive system, the very system activists are claiming to fight. Making colonized social categories intersect doesn't rid the structure of coloniality, and it bypasses the work we need to do within the categories themselves.
Thank you.
Yes. And then she says, I argue that what Black women in particular are experiencing isn't an intersection of race, sexism, and racism, which has been popularly called misogynoir. there is to be an entirely different setup to talk about our experiences. This requires us to undo these intersections and dissect the actual categories themselves to reshape and remold them. In this book, I go in further detail to explain why I believe intersectionality isn't the best framework to analyze multidimensional oppressions. We need to advocate epistemic ruptures in the current ways in which we understand the world and how to solve its problems. And then she also discusses how, in a prior quote, I'm not going to go into it because I'll be just reading the whole book to you, about how speciesism is in fact colonialism as well, which I think, and also white supremacy is anti-Black and anti-animal. And it just, the whole thing, it makes it terribly clear that this is one big blob.
Yeah, absolutely. Like people talk about white cishet ableist patriarchy, patriarchal capitalism, or they say like some people talk about like kyriarchy. I know that Thierry in chat just said like dominator culture. I just call it the worm. Like I just think it's a big fucking worm that's like eating our future. You know?
I would say like I mean when in discussions with like other Maori, I just a lot of the time people just hear it referred to as like as Pākehā hegemony. So Pākehā means like, you know, like, well, like colonize or whatever, like that, but just the like hegemony, like the idea that it's like this is like the standard or whatever, like that, and we're kind of like pushing back against that. But I think like the intersectionality thing is interesting because it's like all of those things like intersectionality and privilege and stuff were kind of like initially developed as these like, I would say like messy and kind of flawed concepts to explain very simply to people that didn't understand, like, you know, like to basically just be like, hey, this is kind of roughly how it worked. And then people have like increasingly like atomized their identities and kind of got quite
atomized.
was like solipsistic. Is solipsistic the word where it's like you kind of like you're thinking about your own personal experience and not outside of that, which I think ties into what Soph was saying earlier about people being like, oh well, if you're not like, you know, if you're not autistic, then you're not,
right, exactly,
things like that, you know, like, and then I think that's like something that has like been super damaging to online discourse around everything from like race, gender, you know, ability, all that kind of stuff over the last couple of years. But also I feel like this has been great, but I actually want to know something a little bit about what the US is imposing on Haiti.
Listen, I just have one more thing. I just really want to say,
go for it.
Kira said in that quote just then about the epistemic change that we need, right? Well, like we need a shift in our epistemology. We need like the way that we understand and view the world to change, not just in like changing from like we see that there's capitalism and we want to imagine that there'll be socialism or something like that, but a deeper like epistemic change, like the way that we understand the knowledge that controls the world. And like that's it with this critique of intersectionality. Like it still buys into like a taxonomy, like classifying every little bit of the world. Like again, I've recommended this before, but like Meyer's book, A Nazi Word for a Nazi Thing, right? It's about the word degenerate and how the Nazis used the word degenerate as this unclassifiable, right? They were making a classified world with hard borders and rules, right? And then the things that had to be eliminated were degenerate because they could not fit into any of the categories. So if they could destroy those things, then they can make all the categories work. And then like when the Allies went over the historical record and got to write, as the victors got to write the history, like they didn't talk about Magnus Hirschfeld. They didn't talk about Black people's experiences. They didn't talk about a lot of disabled experiences or trans experiences and all of these things because they still viewed it as like degenerate and unclassifiable. And we need to shift to a new epistemology that rejects like the rigid classifications. We need to just destroy this like taxonomy mindset. That's the fundamental thing. And when you see like people who are getting into the micro politics of several different like niche identities that they've like fixated on online, like Tim saying like solipsistically, like this is my identity and it has these like political boundaries and here are the rules for interacting with it. It's like, no, this is like doing the work of the people who put us in this situation for them.
It's like colonizing your own
mind.
there. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I will stop. I promise.
Just to touch on one thing you just said. Did you know the book The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich? That book, apparently in the entire, that's considered like the foremost like authority on like the Nazi regime. Not a single time, apparently, what I read, not a single time do they mention that gay people were targeted by the Nazis.
Of course.
Oh yeah,
Isn't that amazing?
Right.
They talk about
it's like the
every
book
little
burning, and it's like
conversation, every little like every little nitpicky detail. And however, they don't even discuss that huge genocide that occurred, and also like the fact that gay people were essentially left to finish out their sentences after the so-called liberation of the camps.
I've had my final word on it. I'm not gonna. Anyone else who has a final thing to say before you? I'll tell you about the UN in a minute. But like,
no more takes. No more takes. I'm sick of the takes. There's so many. We were talking about Yay.
Right, let's do the quick. Oh yeah,
okay,
Elon Musk unbanned Yay and then rebanned him. Okay.
Oh yeah, Elon Musk and Ye fell out. Ye posted a picture of Elon Musk without a shirt on, and then as his final tweet, it's very funny.
And then Elon Musk banned him.
Yeah, I mean, I find that I do find it interesting that the only tweet that actually got him banned or deleted was the one that showed him, Elon and Kanye tweeting, messaging together. You know, that shows that there's like this open line of communication there, which is like, that was more interesting to me than the content of the message.
But what about free speech? Isn't Elon freeing all the speech online? Why is he banning someone? Very curious. And yet he participates in society. Anyway, did you know about Haiti? Do you know about how we keep on talking about Haiti and how the global imperialism just keeps on fucking over Haiti again and again forever? Well, the US has just imposed sanctions on Haiti for drug trafficking, which look, I'm not trying to build an ongoing like Red Planet conspiracy theory around Haiti, but like I am just increasingly like deeply skeptical of any Western reporting around Haiti, because they're just like the humanitarian crisis, the gangs, the drugs, and it's like, well, but the gangs like blockaded an oil port because the prices of oil were going to go through the roof. And like so now
typical gang
now
behavior.
we're imposing so now
everyone becomes a gang.
Sanctions. Yeah, exactly, right? Like now the US is imposing sanctions for drug trafficking.
Drugs, by the way.
No, exactly, right? Like like that. What was that like? There was that documentary on Netflix that was about like the Silk Road, like dark web drug trade. That guy was in like Germany. Like, why don't we impose sanctions on Germany for drug trade? Is that not an issue here? But yeah, I just think it again and again and again. No matter what the like, you can and should look into more of the details on it. But like, I'm only trying to go through things fast at this point. But like every time that we see more punishments for Haiti over and over and over again, the reason is just not whatever reason that the US or UN are saying. It is just because they want to like punish Haiti forever and ever and ever and never let it like form a democratic and probably because it seems to be what the people are into, a socialist country.
And also, it should be said that sanctions don't really hurt the people at the very top.
Oh, absolutely.
So, they're gonna hurt all the people that apparently Biden his heart's breaking for.
I'm interested in what
their lives are being upended by this drug trafficking.
I'm interested in what this headline actually means here, because it says imposes new sanctions on Haiti officials. And it says the Biden administration says measures. Sorry.
Sure. So I can elaborate on that a little bit, because we in the news we covered a little bit last week. We talked about how they were imposing sanctions on specific politicians, basically like because of the way that the West controls, like the imperial core controls Haiti's politics. If the West or the US especially, but Canada, whatever, like the UN have imposed sanctions on specific people, it blackballs them from being able to run for president or run for elected office in Haiti. So it's a way that they control who is allowed to run. And so we were talking last week a little bit about like someone getting sanctions for like ties to gangs. And again, like gangs, the gangs this guy had ties to is just that like people who are organizing protests who also are in gangs, again, like doing what we would just call direct action if it was being done in the US.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, they impose sanctions for ties to gangs or sanctions for drug trafficking, and it's like the crucial effect here is that they're going to stop people from being able to run for office again. And it seems to be the pattern is for working closely with Haitians who are protesting and like fighting against American imperialism. Seems to be the broad strokes of it.
Mm-hmm. It kind of is like a little bit of a tie into the thing you were just discussing with the degenerate label. Like you just slap this particular label, whatever it is, to dehumanize a group, and then you could do whatever you want to them. And it doesn't even have to be like a clearly delineated label. You don't have to even prove how you even reach that conclusion.
No, it's just gangs. It's just crime.
Gangs,
it's just evil.
Terrorists, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's easier to gain a sort of consent for this stuff with the pre-existing white supremacist rhetoric that we hear about countries in the imperial core and how they operate and stuff. Like if you the reason they're getting away with calling it gangs in Haiti is because it's Haiti. It's a country with majority black population. It's a country that is in the imperial periphery. It's a country that is like, again and again and again fought back against US imperialism, and they're sort
Western
of like
using
Are there any white countries that America says has a gang problem?
No, exactly.
Well, that's a good question, isn't it?
The Western media isn't going to be like Holland in the grip of gangs, right?
Right.
Like,
well, if they said that, they would be like, it's because of migrants or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like Muslims or something like that.
If London was shut down by like Just Stop Oil protesters and there were like national strikes, like the Reuters wouldn't be like UK frozen by gangs. Like they want specifically like this mental image of like a very dark-skinned black man with a machete. Like they want you to just be utterly terrified.
Actually, there's a good example of that was in Australia. They had for a while they had an African gang scare that was totally just completely manufactured. Like they later found out that there was absolutely no evidence for whatever, but it was all blamed on Somalian and Sudanese immigrants. And
they do this
like
in the UK. They do this in the UK.
It was like this wild thing where like people were terrified, and there were like people on the news being like, "Oh, all these African gangs are running around in neighborhoods with machetes and all this kind of stuff like that."
100%.
Yeah, and there was just like
so false for this. It's just so
when
tragic.
the dust settled, there was like no evidence of anything like that actually happening. It's just like some people saw some new dark-skinned migrants in their neighborhood and just fucking locked their doors, and then it was fucking wild because it was like a thing that people were like very convinced was actually happening.
Someone like calling the police, like this gang, they're all wearing like colorful clothes and they're all organizing together in this same building. It's just like, ma'am, that is church. You are describing people going to church.
Yeah.
Well, the last little thing that we've got on the list here really is to talk about. So it is kind of going back to the Twitter Elon kind of situation or whatever. But
it's so a nothing story.
Yeah, it's wild because it's a thing. It's like a manufactured kind of outrage that so Elon has leaked some documents. Now that he's taken over Twitter, he's exposed some of the dirty secrets, but it's absolutely nothing. So what they're saying is that this is evidence of Twitter at the behest of a political organization, which is saying it's the Democratic Party, censoring the news and altering just like removing things. It's like for a social media company to remove anything at the call of a political party is like, people are saying that's like fucked up, that's censorship, that proves that there is some kind of like political collusion and all this kind of stuff. And what it really is, Yeah, exactly. So what it really is, there was like a handful of tweets that were deleted because the Dems, were like, hey, can you get rid of these?
Was it the Dems?
What they were.
Really? Or who?
Well, so it was, so
it was
the
like
thing,
Joe Biden people or something like that.
So it's what the tweets were they were pictures of Joe Biden's son Hunter's dick, and this happened. You all might remember.
I've seen it. It's bad.
Which, by the way, that's revenge porn, and it's illegal in many states in America.
Exactly.
So it's actually it should be removed regardless of who is. It's not supposed to be on the platform. Period.
Totally consistent with not just the law, but also Twitter's terms of services, that this is, you know, revenge porn. It was from a laptop that was lost by Hunter Biden, which, you know, everyone probably knows about. They've seen all the pictures of him doing whatever. But yeah, so it's totally fine for them to do it, regardless of who, you know, who asked them to delete it, whether it was like a political candidate or whatever like that. But so yeah, Elon and that guy Matt Taibbi and all the little minions running around saying that this proves what Elon was saying about, you know, Twitter being biased, and that it was a good thing that he took over because now he is fighting back against the bias and all that kind of stuff, which is just like a total, you know, it's just completely made up. And it's like, if anything, well, I mean, I think it's absolutely obvious at this point that if anything, they're doing the opposite and
just put my own tweet
pushing
on this,
the bias
honestly.
towards the right.
It reminds me of a clip of Noam Chomsky where he's talking about manufacturing consent, and he's like, well, we all know, it's common sense that the media has a left-wing bias. Everyone knows this, right? So you can always focus on the left-wing bias. You can always come back over and over and over again to the left-wing bias and always push to destroy the left-wing bias. And it's like, there was never a left-wing bias to begin with. It's capitalist media working in conjunction with the capitalist state. But no, exactly, it's the left-wing bias always, right?
The left-wing media is like a newspaper made by a bunch of trots, like in a basement somewhere.
Exactly.
That gets
the left-wing media bias exists only in like a magazine that you are handed on the way to Peckham-plex outside the Costa on the pedestrian crossing that tells you about like the war in Yemen. That is the only like left-wing bias you will find in the media.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, but you know, now obviously we're seeing on Twitter, we're literally seeing all these like people that have been banned for just being open fascists being brought back, having their accounts reinstated,
and tons of people on the left are getting suspended for nothing, for the record.
For
enough, like really great organizations like mutual aid groups and stuff like that are just getting suspended for.
And even like whistleblowers against Twitter, against Tesla, all this kind of stuff, like people getting banned then, which is wild because it's like, you know, like this is he's doing the thing. Like, you know, like anyway. But so that's it for
one last thing. Producer Conrad has just put this in our feed. Matt Taibbi actually said that both parties had access to these tools. For instance, in 2020, requests from both the Trump White House and the Biden campaign were received and honored. Now, as Conrad's actually pointing out very correctly, the Biden campaign, when he was not president, is not the state and is not the Democratic Party. But, in terms of like free speech suppression, in terms like legal terms, like Trump in the White House using those tools is that, right? So
absolutely.
But there's that left-wing bias
the other thing
again.
I forgot. It's like, Biden wasn't even in power at this time. It's like, it's,
by the way,
so wild.
These are some of the tweets that are being pulled and the reasons why accounts are getting suspended and stuff like that. Here's one where it says, kind of weird that one dude gets to decide if like a billion of us can communicate or not.
Hateful conduct that's being
another one.
Under.
Another one is Elon's free speech as long as it doesn't hurt his fragile ego, and that one got pulled for hateful conduct. And the last one, I don't know who in the replies needs to hear this, but you can't defend Elon Musk if the only thing you have in common with him is a receding hairline and that your girl left you.
I co-sign that joke as a bald
also
guy.
Violated apparently the terms of service. But you know what doesn't violate terms of service? Being a Nazi.
Well, no.
I was going to bring up a shirtless picture.
Exactly.
Of Elon Musk.
Exactly. If you're a Nazi and also you show Elon Musk's flabby body, then game over. If you show people that he is made of alabaster and mayonnaise, then game over for you, EA.
Game over.
I say this as a flabby person made of alabaster and mayonnaise before anyone points out my anti-white racism accurately.
The wild thing is like the kind of their ability to ban these tweets that are extremely like niche, right? Like it's, like these niche tweets about, Elon, about free speech or whatever like that, being able to differentiate tweet that is praising Elon for free speech versus, like condemning him for not, allowing free speech, whatever. Like, it kind of shows that they have these tools to moderate content to a very
You're 100%.
like to a pretty fine level of detail or whatever, and that they just haven't, that they just weren't doing it,
accidentally showing Twitter's whole ass for its entire existence.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really
so it's like,
good point.
oh well, all these people that haven't been banned, like all the TERFs, all the racists, all this kind of shit, like, who have been getting a free pass for all this time, where it's like, man, if it was this easy, like, they could have sorted out a long time ago. But
all right, I'm gonna do an audio refresh. Hang on for 3 seconds, Sophie. Okay, you're good. Yeah, you're back.
I wonder if I could say my favorite word while you were doing the audio
refresh.
Don't. So, you know what I want to know about now is, now the news is done. We have an hour left. I'm so sorry, Mule.
No, that works for me because I'm extremely unprepared.
We promise we're professional streamers. Mule, I want to know all about this buy-to-let crisis. Please tell me about it.
First of all, I just want to give a shout out to my sponsor for this stream. No, they're not a sponsor, but they're a really cool left-wing organization called 0161 Community. You can see their logo there. That's the Manchester B with the 3 arrows of anti-fascist.
Very nice.
Really cool.
This is the left-wing bias in the media, everyone.
That's right. You should go and check out 0161 Community. Great mutual aid, anti-fascist network. And this hoodie in particular comes with it. I don't think I've ever shown this on Red Planet, but this is really handy during the winter months. It comes with a really handy, if I can just get it, face warmer.
Ooh, a nice little face warmer. I love that.
That's a nice,
I remember when we were in Oxford and Mule was showing me a lot of like cool moves that he learned for sports, like, how to use your elbow for sports, and like
how to use your knees,
how to use your palm and your knees for sports. And I just think, like, in the winter months, like, that face warmer is going to allow you to do those sports like really effectively.
Because when you're in the dojo, most people know that on the mats in the dojo, they're normally big old warehouses, aren't they? And they're freezing.
Yeah, they're pretty chilly.
So
chilly. You don't want to get those feet chilly or face chilly.
We don't want a little peanut to catch a cold.
No, exactly. I hate colds. I can't hear what any of you are saying.
I'm sad that Mule hasn't been to my house in a little while, because I still haven't been able to show him the switchblades that I got in Armenia, so we can discuss favorite hobbies like whittling and like getting moss off of trees when you go camping.
I love all that.
I'm really
stuff.
looking forward to that. And that would go well also with your winter sports collection.
You would honestly whittle. I can totally see you whittling.
I would be doing a lot of whittling. I
whittled
before. I may whittle again.
Oh, I thought you said whittle. Anyway, listen, you walk right into that one. So, landlords, oh boy, they suck. You know what's even worse than landlords? A whole bunch of them, with loads of investment and support from horrific tax evading, wealth hoarding scum. Today, I'm going to be talking about the huge investor buy-to-let market that is raising rents astronomically, evicting people in order to do so, and creating a stranglehold on the housing market that further affects the material conditions of the working class and marginalized people. The most marginalized people in society are on the worst receiving end of this. Now, this is a learning episode for Tim and Kira. Sophie knows what I mean when I say investor buy-to-let, don't you? You know what that means.
Yeah, I do know
why don't you
it.
Explain to our Yankee and Aotearoa and Maori friends, what is that? What?
There's no slur for that. Well, not that you guys know.
I totally know, but like, what if you explained instead? No,
okay.
I'm kidding. Buy-to-let is it's kind of in the name. It is to do with like no, I'm gonna fuck this up so badly now.
It's okay.
The basic problem, right, is that the free market, perfect as it is, right, has these logics to it, like, supply and demand, that like there are going to be so many homes to rent, and then there are going to be so many renters, and then they should be able to get those homes, that they should be able to rent them. But a funny thing happens when someone comes in who has a lot of capital, which is where they can just buy like a ton of homes, and they know that
because they have lots of friends and family.
Because they have so many people that they want to house, because they want to create housing for so many people. They want to then they know that it would actually be more profitable for them to hold out for like higher rent paying customers than to rent to the people who actually exist. So they don't care about the demand. They just care about this hypothetical demand. This is compounded when you have like things like the stock market trading on housing, right? When it's like, if we can build this many like luxury condos, and at some point in the future, people will come along who will pay astronomical rents in order to rent them, right? Then that will be profitable. So it's a very good stock to invest in, right? So you've got this enormous investor market, and then like all the housing that's being created is for future luxury buyers and luxury renters who don't fucking exist, to be clear. And this is plaguing a lot of places. It's really bad in the UK. It's especially bad in Ireland, which is a tax haven. A lot of people don't know that like things that happen in like economically in Ireland. One of them is that it's a tax haven for a lot of imperial core countries. And so a lot of investors are investing money into like having masses and masses of residential properties built in Ireland that are like those new, those disgusting new builds that are like concrete blocks, but then they've had like brick tile put on them to make them look like they're brick houses, but they're not. And then inside they're just like disgustingly empty, like they're like things people should like hardwood floors or whatever, but it's just a blank cube inside. And it's like capitalism is so much better at creating individual choice than Soviet architecture, which just makes identical concrete cubes everywhere, and like no one can afford them. So then there's like a massive homeless population and a massive population of people who like are like ready to like could pay some rent for a place if there was one, but like there just literally aren't any. And that's kind of the nature of the crisis. I'm sure that Mule can pick me up if I've missed any crucial details here, but the nature of it is that like investors, capitalists, people who can invest into property are creating a situation where like no one can even afford the cheapest flats that are on the market because they're all marketed to, again, a hypothetical future richer customer, because it's more profitable to firstly to like wait for that guy, and secondly to invest and get returns on like, because your returns to be clear also like your returns are on the flats getting built, right? And you can trade that stock as many times as you want and make money off it while the things are still being built. Like they never actually have to be rented by anyone in order for you to make money.
Is it just me? I can't understand this. Like I just don't. You don't have to explain it to me. I just want to make it clear that if anyone else can't understand this, I also can't understand this. How it's more profitable to make shit that no one like purchases.
No, it doesn't make sense.
That's like, because that's because what they tell us, the working class, about capitalism is all a lie. It's that same sort of like pull yourself up by your bootstrap stuff. It's like, no, actually what happens is everybody just cheats and everybody just lies and steals and fucks each other over.
They like bet on people failing. They bet on stuff like that. Like, no, it's not okay.
And you only get to be involved in it at all if you have masses of capital to begin with.
Literally.
Is there like a capital gains tax or anything like that over there?
I just wanted to.
This is the thing. It's like you of course have the capital gains tax.
Oh, you have it?
But,
see, we don't have it, so it makes it worse over here, where they just like sit on empty houses and make like more than the average
but you see, Tim,
and
they still get around that in this country though, because as Sophie's previously said, Ireland is a tax haven. There are multiple tax havens all around the UK. In fact, Jersey is a tax haven, which is a sort of weird little island that's in between France and England. That's
like the reality show,
the original New Jersey. Before they had New Jersey, we had Jersey.
Yes.
Oh, right.
No, I just want to touch on one example really quickly, which is I talk about like, I don't dox myself to my like street address, but I'm very happy to talk about like the neighborhood I live in, because we do involve ourselves in some community stuff here in Southwark, right? So we're right by Elephant and Castle, which is a predominantly Black, I think Caribbean specifically neighborhood, and it's been that way for a long time. It's historically a very Black neighborhood, and so people think of gentrification as this like this kind of insidious force, right? Where like some arty white people show up and some students show up, and then like then there's a Whole Foods, and then like, you know, oh no, the like affordable like locally owned small business like food supplier is like bled out by the Whole Foods, and then people who are poorer, they suddenly live in a food desert because they can't afford the right. They think it's this kind of incremental, insidious process. But if you look at somewhere like Elephant and Castle, it's like incredibly violent and incredibly like forceful, because the construction industry people are like working directly with the local council and pay and like, you know, take them out to fancy dinners and convince them to like allow all of these huge projects, as we discussed before, like luxury condos that like no one can actually, like no one who's already there can actually afford to live in. So, you know, you go down Old Kent Road and you're going towards like the Elephant and Castle roundabout. So a quick tour of like gentrification there, you'll see a whole like block of massive new builds that look like shit, and like one of them's on top of a Sainsbury's and one of them's on top of like a gym, and like all of these luxury apartments on top that like most of them are empty because, as we discussed, and then like you go just like under the rail bridge and there's where the Elephant and Castle shopping center used to be, like, which was a huge community like
a
hub,
retail
like it was
center.
a massive place that like loads of people used to like exist and hang out and like have local businesses that they would trade in, and it just got like fucking knocked down because the council was like, yeah, sure, just build more like dog shit new build luxury apartments there. And as you go around that, you'll also see in the distance, I forget the name of this place, but it's people who live in London will know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as I start describing it. There is a building that has 3 fans in the top. It's visible from all over London. It has 3 like fans in the top. It won an architecture award for being hypothetically completely carbon neutral because it has wind power. But the fans have never been on. So it's not fucking carbon neutral because it doesn't generate its own power because the fans have never been on.
It's like a
from
debate
combination
building.
of it's I misheard. I thought you said the debate bro building. I thought you meant if debate bros could build an apartment complex out of their kind of arguments. That's what.
No, they
be.
couldn't.
But the fans have never even been on, from a combination of they've never filled the apartments in there more than like a third of the apartments because they're too expensive, and they found out that the fans would be too loud for the people who would live on the upper floors, so they just didn't switch them on. And it's like, this is the kind of shit where like the council is working with these people, so the council says, yes, we're building it, and you get no say in it. There were years of protests against the shopping center being demolished. They just did it. Right outside the shopping center. This is crucial. Sorry, I'm so nearly done with this example, but it pisses me off.
It's a great example. It's a great example. Yeah.
Outside the shopping center, there was a statue that was an elephant with a castle on its back. The neighborhood, again, elephant and castle. It's literally the icon of the community. And they knocked down the shopping center, and there was this moment where they just like put it on a truck and just like drove it away. Like just like years of protests, and they just didn't care at all what anyone was like democratically like asking for, what the people wanted, and they just like fucking hauled the elephant away. It was heartbreaking. I am done now. I am done yelling.
So you did a great job there of explaining buy to let, I think, to our
what does
friends.
let mean? What does
so let means? So when
you're
you're buying to let, you're buying to rent it out.
So let means rents.
Yeah, so it's like letting someone live there, basically. That's where the let comes from. British English is ridiculous, yes. So anyway.
Thank you, socialism or barbarism, for the 5 subs. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And yeah, let and lease are etymologically related, yes. Okay. So, you know, essentially what we're getting is, like Sophie rightly pointed out, councils are getting courted by huge investment capital development firms where they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to build, we're going to renovate your city. Manchester is a great example of this.
I could yell about Neil Coyle MP for over an hour. We don't have that time. I will leave it.
Yeah, like Manchester's a great example. So like a lot of people are being priced out of London right now because of the reasons that Sophie said. So people might want to like, you know, leave home in London and then all of a sudden they go, oh, all these flats are £1,900 a month for literally a box under Euston Station. So like, you know, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move to somewhere else. I'm going to move up north because it's cheaper up north. But in Manchester, because there's such a drive to change the image of the city, because we were the first ever industrialized city in England, I think in Europe maybe, where we basically like, you know, profited off the slave trade and lots of factories were built in order to, you know, make the cotton into, you know, all sorts of stuff, and then canals and all this stuff. So we're trying to change, or like get rid of all these like old red brick buildings, and you know, become a modern metropolis. And so with the council wanting that as a drive, these big development firms are given permission to sort of like develop all over the city. And again, what happens is we result in that same situation that's happening in London, where there's actually these extremely overpriced flats. There's loads, like I live in Manchester city centre, and all this development is going on, not just in Manchester city centre, but in Salford as well. And there are all these flats that look kind of nice from the outside. They look like your average, I guess, American city. We don't really kind of have that in the UK, and it's just started being a thing, these high-rise apartment buildings and stuff. And they're sort of sold as affordable student housing, but every single one of them is, again, you know, £900 a month, like £1,200 a month per person, you know, if it's a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom flat or whatever, and no one could afford it. And you know what's happening as well is when these developments are happening, like what happened in Elephant and Castle. There's a place in Rochdale. My comrade Ben from Greater Manchester Tenants Union spoke about this when we had him on a couple of weeks ago, or it might be a couple of months ago now. But there's some council flats where people are housed under housing association rents, so cheap rents for people who can't afford, you know, astronomical private landlord rents. Well, even there's more and more people are in that situation, but anyway, that's what housing associations are sort of made to do. But anyway, and there's these big tower blocks, and they're trying to develop over them, and with no sort of guarantee to the people within them that they would be housed in the new developments, or even that they would be housed at all. So actually what's happening is people are being made homeless by this, and it's exacerbating the homeless crisis. I think the number is about 60% of homeless people. Like one of the reasons that 60% of homeless people were made homeless is because of no fault evictions from landlords. So that's like a section 21 where they just
no fault eviction. So just no reason whatsoever.
No reason. The landlords are literally like, you're going now. It's my property. See you later, right? And obviously that is something that is just disgusting. Like that shouldn't exist at all, because housing should be a human right.
That he says 60%.
Yeah, and that's not to say that 60% of those people don't have issues like the issues that plague the homeless community, like, you know, being a marginalized person, having mental health issues and drugs and addiction issues. You know, it's just that the Section 21 has also been, you know, that's happened amongst, whether it's with other issues that they've had or it's the main reason.
Because I feel like if they could find another issue, then they would probably not do the no fault eviction, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't count it as no fault eviction.
They'd be like, you're not paying your rent, or
it depends on
drugs, or
it depends on who does the study, right? It depends on who's looking at the statistics and whether they're gonna.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think the statistics are from shelter.
Amount of people, a huge, disgusting amount of people are being made homeless by no fault evictions.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, when you think about in lots of places, and this is why this is important to sort of talk about this on Red Planet, and we're an international show, like most countries in the imperial core have a homeless crisis, right? Yeah. And this is why. And, you know, these people don't just operate in the UK. You know, they operate all over Europe. They operate in Aotearoa, New Zealand, they operate in the USA, they operate in Canada, they operate in every single country, you know, even in the imperial periphery. It's more of a sort of neo-colonialist thing that happens in the imperial periphery, and I don't know too much about it, but, you know, hopefully we'll get someone on in the future to speak to that. But so I just kind of want to give you an idea of the kind of people that are behind this. So I, as I said at the start of the show, I and a couple of my comrades at Great Manchester Tenants Union, we organised a protest yesterday. It's the day of action in solidarity with London Renters Union and Live in Rent Scotland. And we basically went and protested a letting agent. And letting agents are fast becoming these investment buy-to-let companies. So it's not just one landlord that's doing it, right? Yes, you already know what I'm going to say, right? These companies are making so much money for managing properties for landlords who can't be asked because, you know, they don't want to be a landlord. They don't want to maintain a property for someone. They don't want to deal with the, you know, with the tenants' issues and stuff like that. They just want to make money. That's all it is. They're enabled.
It's the same down here.
Exactly
the same.
So what they do is they give it to a letting agent, and then letting agents, they make so much money that they've started to buy properties from landlords, and now they own the property. It is scummy. It's disgusting. And my comrade Ben, he knows a lot more about this, but he was speaking at the protest yesterday about the Le Monde Group. That's LOMOND, and the Le Monde Group are, I think they're like a company that has a lot of relations with Thornley Groves, or they're an overarching company or something like that. And their explicit statement is to, you know, basically take over the entirety of Manchester, you know, helping Thornley Groves to do so. And Greater Manchester, it's absolutely like horrific.
It's just such an evil villain like statement.
It's cartoonish. It's literally cartoonish.
It's just like evil villain shit.
Exactly. Up. And you know, when you hear it, most people are like, "No, that can't be right. There's got to be something." No, but no, they said this. This is what happened. Yeah, and so we went and protested outside Thornley Groves. It was really funny actually, because one of the first things that Thornley Groves did, which shows that they know that stuff like this is going to happen, and B, they're terrified of being held accountable for it. They locked their doors as soon as they saw us coming.
That's right, I saw you say that.
Yeah, it was hilarious. We saw a couple of like scared faces, like, because we had this big banner and we were marching across the road.
Because then no one's going to be able to come in anyways when you're there.
Yes, exactly. So it was
shut down business.
a guy,
on the phone or internet, but then you can always, you know, find ways to, you know.
Exactly. A guy came, there was multiple people who came to sort of like get in Thornley Groves. And I think there was 5 people in total in the hour that we were there who tried to get in the letting agent's office. And 4 of them were like, yeah, these guys are shit. And we went, great, here's our number. You know, get in contact with us. We'd love to help you with your dispute with Thornley Groves because they're shit, like you say. There was one guy who was a bit mad at us because he was like, I'm trying to get in to pay my rent. And we kind of said to him, well, you know, we're not going to be here all day. And if they have a go at you for not being able to pay your rent because they locked the door, because they didn't want to be held accountable by a bunch of activists who are trying to help people that they've absolutely fucked over, you know, deal with, then that's on them really, isn't it? And he went, oh yeah, I guess you're right, and just walked off. So anyway, you know, that
reminds me of like, oh, your protest against like oil is making me not be able to like get to work, and now I'm like cranky about that. It's just like, shut up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, what, you missed a day of work? That's great. I hate work. Why do you like work so much? What's wrong with you? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, like if you're like politically unengaged or whatever like that, and you have like, you know, something like that, it can be like, it can fuck up your day. You know, you can be like, oh fuck, I had to get in by like 11 o'clock and now I'm going to be late. So protesters and stuff like that. But I think it's like, it's always worth trying to look at the bigger picture. Like if we get people like that at the shop, you know, whenever there's like protest on or whatever, you'd be tattooing someone and they'll say like, oh yeah, and like traffic was really bad because these people were here or whatever. And I always try and take the time and explain and be like, oh yeah, well, you know, like it's because of this thing or whatever. Because a lot of the time, like, you know, the only line they're going to hear about it is just from the media, you know. So it'll be like, oh, these wild Antifa revolutionaries, whatever like that, are trying to, you know, they're trying to do this and do that or whatever like that. Whereas like, you know, you can talk to a person and be like, hey, well, you know, they're just normal people, and this is what's going on. And it's like, it's actually the corporations that are at fault here, and these people are just trying to kind of like,
Mhm.
you know, like claw back something for the working class.
It kind of reminds me a bit of the railroad strikes. How Biden's whole thing was that I'm a pro-labor president, but these strikes need to end because they're disrupting the economy. It's like, that's the point.
Yeah.
The point is to disrupt the economy. That's why you have
The
to bend the knee
economy
to
is
them. That's why
disrupting
they're powerful.
labor.
That's why
Exactly.
labor is in fact like powerful and should not be at the like behest of the kings and the lords and whatever.
Yeah, that's it. So Thornley Groves, like I say, they own loads of properties in Manchester, and they get away with having these horrific conditions for people to live in. And whenever they get, you know, pulled up and you know, asked about what, you know, why aren't they dealing with this stuff, they you know, shoot people off, they charge people illegal fees. We have one member who, because she's a migrant from France, they were like, well, you know, I'm sorry, there's not really a process for migrants. Again, chat, remember what I said earlier, the most marginalized in society are on the worst receiving end of this. She was asked to pay her rent 6 months up front. 6 months up front.
Who has
Now,
the money to do that?
Exactly. There's a point to that, isn't there? There's a point to not anyone having the money to do that. Unless you are.
You're not even getting like a discount, you're not getting interest. That's just like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing where they're like, we're still making money from this being empty and all that kind of stuff. So if we're going to take someone on and we're going to, you know, take the risk of, you know, having to actually maintain our properties and all this kind of stuff, then we're going to try and get, you know, as much out of them as possible.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. And what's more than that is that they issued her a Section 21, so a no-fault eviction, an entire month before her prepaid rent was up. So she prepaid her rent till December, and they evicted her in November. And so they're like, no, you got to get out. Sorry. Like, but she's paid rent till fucking December. And you asked her to do that because she's a migrant. Like, what is wrong with you? You know,
disgusting.
It's inhuman. And this is the stuff that they've been doing all over the city. We have a list as I was saying this when I was on the mic yesterday. We have a list as long as your arm that is disputes from Thornley Groves. It's absolutely horrific. But yeah, so, you know, these are the kind of people that are doing stuff. We also have a letting agent in, you know, students are another group that are being exploited. And there are various, obviously, you know, there are all kinds of students from all kinds of backgrounds, aren't there? And again, we're going to see those. You know, I said yesterday, one of the things that I wanted to really drive home to people yesterday at the protest is that, you know, the most marginalized people will be targeted first, because they are always seen as the wretched of the earth and the easiest to oppress. And that's why we have to look out for disabled people and people of color and migrants and women and you know, queer folk and the students who are renting from this company Mazzino. You know, like, not only are they finding it so hard to find a place to live while they study because of the extortionate rents that are just being, you know, put through the stratosphere at the moment, but they are they're basically exploited into just accepting whatever offer they can get because of that. Do you know what I mean? So they're struggling to find somewhere to live, and then you know, someone at Mazzino will be like, well, we've got a really good place, come and have a look at it, and then they go there and it's shit. It's got an infestation, and this is I'm talking about a real dispute now that's happening. They've got a rodent infestation, they've got a silverfish infestation, and where do silverfish come from? Well, they're attracted to damp. So the reason for the infestation is because the house is fucking wet. It's a soggy, wet house. It's literally, you know, moist as fuck, as they say. And you know, they do say that, don't they? Who are they? I don't know. The wizards, I guess. But like, Kira's loving this, aren't you? Anyway, so that's silverfish are attracted to that. The house is damp as fuck, and it's horrible. That's the main point.
The house is damp.
I'm trying to say the house is damp.
As they also say.
They also say that, don't they?
The wizards are always saying that.
The wizards of the coast. horrible letting company, and you know, students will go and view this house and be like, okay, well, I need somewhere to live. And then they'll be like, okay. And our member said something really interesting to us. Our member that brought us this dispute that was from this house. We asked her about her housemates, because one of the things that we do as the Great Manchester Tenants Union is we like to, if there's other people in a house, if it's a house share, we say, well, they're all experiencing the same problems, so let's bring them into the meeting that we have and, you know, talk to them and, you know, hopefully agitate them into being radicalized against landlords, and then they'll be extremely based members of the union, right? But unfortunately, what she said was that all the rest of her housemates came from extremely privileged backgrounds, and therefore see it as kind of a holiday. They see it as actually like poverty tourism in a way, right? And that is another issue entirely, but I think it's something that we really have to talk about, the gatekeeping of education, because that's kind of another reason for that, but that's related, but it's, you know, it's another thing. But anyway, you know, these are the situations, these are the conditions that people are living in. You know, our member is a working class student, and she's the one who's sort of spearheaded this, you know, dispute and wants to take on Mazzino, wants to take on her landlords and stuff. And you know, we, you know, are ongoing with that dispute, and I can't say too much else about it. But I do want to talk about how sometimes when we have disputes, and this is a thing that you can all research, because, you know, you've seen probably, I don't know, a lot of people who watch BreadTube, you know, kind of videos and stuff. You might have seen Noah Sampson's landlord TikTok is whatever he says it is. It's horrible, it's awful, it's evil and stuff. There's landlord YouTube as well, and I've been exploring this on my stream this week. Shameless plug. But you can check out, because I started getting these adverts. I don't know about yous, but I listen to music on YouTube on my phone. So I'll put it on, like, I'll put it in the sink when I'm having a shower, and my songs will play. And because I don't have YouTube Premium, because I just can't afford it, the ads will play. And this ad started playing, and it was this horrible voice, just like a guy, and he was going like, well, aren't you wondering why you aren't living where I'm living, which is Monaco? You can see it in the background. I live in Monaco. If you don't know Monaco, it's an incredibly affluent country and stuff like this. And it's one of these scam companies. That's what it is, isn't it? It's one of these scam companies that's basically saying you could come and live in Monaco if you just listen to my podcast and all this. And so, you know, we looked into this on my stream, and they're a company called Touchstone Education. You might have got some adverts for him yourself. And what they do is they sell courses to unfortunate individuals who don't do research for £10,000, right? £10,000. And they target people who are in debt, by the way, just so you know, like they literally target people who are in debt. I've just noticed that my alerts are going off on my stream. I'm just going to turn that off. Thank you for following me. Anyway, so what they're doing, and when we looked into it, what we found out, and this is incredible, folks, right? So not only was some of their advice, what they were saying on their YouTube channel, just completely unattainable. We're talking like bootstraps stuff. We did the maths. This one guy was saying like, okay, you take your wage home, you know, spend 80% of it on everything that you need to spend it on, your rent, your utilities, your shopping, all that. And then 20% of it, you put half in savings and you invest half, right? And that half that he's talking about, those two halves that make the whole of the 20%, that's the most of, like, you know, even a living wage, right, in the UK is about 200 quid. It's about 200 quid. And this guy's talking about investing in property with £200. So he's like, buy a mortgage, become an investor, buy to let landlord with £200. You know, it's not going to happen, isn't it? It's not realistic. So, and not only was that a thing, but then we saw another video where this other investor buy-to-let landlord was saying that what she did was, so she was in debt and she got in touch with this company, and what she did was she did a thing called rent to rent. Now, does anyone want to hazard a guess
to rent
at what that is?
So wait, so you rent. So normally you get like rent to buy, like, you know, you rent for a certain amount of time, and then, you know, like,
you rent so that maybe one day you can rent out your place to someone else?
Not quite. Not
a
quite.
sublease?
Yeah.
Okay, so no.
No.
So you rent it out and then you take over the full lease and then you rent out a room to someone else.
That's right, Tim. But the reality of that is that it's extremely illegal. And
I've lived in flats like that before, where it's like the head tenant will, be like a 5-bedroom place. The head tenant will, typically have the lease and then rent out all of the rooms. And I've lived in flats before.
Oh, I've totally
I've heard
seen
of
that,
them with
yeah.
friends, where it's like the head tenant will be making a huge profit, and there'll be like a bunch of students, and they'll all be paying like $200 each, and it'll like they're basically paying double what it would cost to actually pay all the bills. And and then someone's just living scot-free. So I understand.
I've seen it happen where like the head tenant insists that people pay him like in cash or something, so it doesn't go through like
I see like Nat and some others are mentioning it in the chat.
Absolutely,
exactly.
And the horrific thing about this is that this was the way that this I guess buy-to-let investor was trying to sort of like sell her success, and not just her success but his success. There was 3 of them, and they were all talking about how they did these extremely illegal things in order to get to where they want. And it was so funny because they said these things out loud on youtube.com. So what I said on my stream, and what I will say to anyone else who like has potentially fallen afoul of Touchstone education, is that if you did want to take out legal proceedings against them, that might be some good evidence to actually take to the lawsuit of them just saying out loud that they're telling people to rent, and in fact that some of their CEOs did that, and that's how they got to where they are now in the being an investor buy to let. So this company is, and I guess the reason I'm bringing up this company is because this is how sketchy the investor buy to let, I guess, what would you call it, organism is. It's not this thing that's happened because capitalism is very good and it works very well, and people are in it for the good stuff and the long run, and we're just developing cities, we're just making horrible neighborhoods ravaged with crime look better. It's like a lot of guys who are basically just breaking the law behind everybody's back, like that, even behind some of their colleagues' backs in some cases, in order to get ahead and just hoard as much wealth as possible. And a lot of these people, when we've done disputes for people in the UK, we could do a thing in the UK. I don't know if this is possible in the US or Aotearoa, but basically you can check on something called a land register. Of who owns a property, and if you do that, you can find out the person who owns the property. There's some contact information there for them, because you need to be able to access that information if you are a landlord, if you're a tenant of a landlord, right? And so that information is all available publicly. It costs £3 per sort of usage of it, I guess. Conrad there is saying you can use tax records in the US apparently to find that stuff out. So that's pretty cool. But essentially what you'll find sometimes, especially with people who are paying rents in these high rises, these quote unquote affordable modern student flats, is that they're owned by like 4 different companies. And you'll see these names of companies, and there's like 4 of them, and they've all got like similar names. So you might have like John Harris Limited, and then John Harris 12 Limited, and then literally, you're laughing, but that's similar to some stuff that I've seen. Yeah. It's literally just like the same company name, but with like a 1 after it. And it's like, who are you fooling? But then when you think about it, they know that they don't need to be that, what do you call it? When you're being a spy, what do you call it? What's that word? Subterfuge.
As subtle as subterfuge.
Subterfuge, yes. Yeah. So they're not. They don't have to be like, they don't have to do it with subterfuge. They could just be like, whatever. Who cares? Who's going to challenge us? Well, that brings me to the next point of my bit, because I've been talking a lot about tenants unions, and I strongly believe that this is a huge thing. I'm big on unions. You might say that Red Planet has union pilled me, because I just think that they're really cool, especially if they're organized in a good way. So Greater Manchester Tenants Union essentially started from a couple of people who worked for a bigger tenants union called Acorn, and some of them were like, we don't like how this runs, they sort of combined with other activists in local communities in Manchester. And then they decided to make Greater Manchester Tenants Union. Ben talks about it all in a previous episode. He knows more about the history than me. I'm probably getting some of that stuff wrong. But the long and short of what I'm trying to say is that, like, what they did was they just went, we should just do this. And then they did it. And, you know, I go on a lot at people in my stream about, like, you know, just unionize. And they're like, how do we do it? And it's like, well, you know, you just start by sort of like getting everybody together and go, this is shit. And then everyone goes, yeah, it is. And then you go, what should we do about it? Oh, it's fucking, I don't know, protest or something. Like, let's do something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you can just start that with something as simple as a WhatsApp group. And I said this when me and Sophie went down to speak to the students at Oxford. And Sophie quite rightly said that, you know, it can be as easy as a WhatsApp group to begin with. But then as soon as you realize that, like, okay, this is something that's going to be permanent, this is something that we're going to do for a long-term period, that's when you have to have a constitution. That's when you have to put down those fundamental agreements that you all agree with. So we're talking like, you know, the intersections. I know that we're moving away from calling it intersections now.
But yeah.
The intersections. So like we are, you know, we are here to make sure that everybody in the marginalized community, you know, understands that we support them and we show solidarity with them. And not just that, but also, you know, we're focused on the main thing, which is abolishing private property as a whole, right? Do you know what I mean? Like that would be a cool and based thing to sort of found and codify into a constitution at your renters union. And you, as long as you organize it democratically, horizontally, so in terms of every single member has a vote on what happens, and that might sound long-winded to some people, but we had the annual general meeting of the tenants union the other week, and it's exactly what you'd think it was. It's like a guy go like, not this. This is the boring bit. Look, the rest of it, there was a lot of other cool stuff where we talked about wins and all this kind of stuff. But like, there was a guy for a bit of it, but it only lasted 15 minutes, really, going like, okay, re-election for DJ Mule, for example, for committee representative, and everyone just went, aye, and that was it. It was over. Like all those votes, they're so quick. Yeah. They just like happen like that. And if there's like an uncountable amount of nays, then it goes to like a paper ballot kind of thing. So it might sound long-winded to have this horizontal democratic thing, but it's actually very easy when it comes down to it. And so if you make sure that it's organized to the point where members can say, okay, I'm bringing this to the committee, I have a problem with the constitution, let's put it to the rest of the members and hopefully make an amendment. And then they should be able to do that at any point, really, kind of thing. So that's that, really. And I know that even that might sound complicated to begin with, but, you know, I want to point to examples where not even people who've called themselves a tenants union have won situations where they've, you know, beaten a greedy landlord. So there was, and I know that this happened, I can't remember the specifics of it, but there was an apartment building, and I think this has happened with multiple apartment buildings, not just in recent times, but in the past, in Brooklyn, I think, and in New York. And there were a bunch of tenants who basically just occupied their apartment building. They did an unofficial rent strike that was just voted, you know, in between themselves, sort of casually, right?
Yeah.
And that resulted in, because some of these tenants had lived in these properties for so long, the landlord was getting such an amount of pressure and stress from this that he eventually caved to their demands and sold them their properties at a heavily discounted rate based on the amount of rent that they previously, you know, paid. And I'm not bigging up the landlord here. This isn't something the landlord did off his own back. This was their demands. This was their demands. Yeah. They didn't even need a tenants union to do this, right? And, you know, it's one of those things where I know that we can't sit here and we can't just ask people to go and make friends with your neighbors. If you are, you know, if you're an anxious person, I get it. I totally get it. But, you know, if there's any opportunity that you can get where you can make some chili for your neighbor. No, I'm not bringing, I'm going to talk about that.
Chili
for my family.
Chilligate. then you can absolutely, you know, take an advantage, take an opportunity to get to know your neighbors in any way as you can, because you might find that you share the same material conditions as them.
Yeah, and it's not impossible that you'll wind up in a situation like that where you know, you're just like, you're all so fed up of the rest of it that you're like, yeah, we're just gonna live here and we don't really care about the landlord anymore. Yeah. I mean, this is like, if you have an organization that's for the abolition of the rent market, the abolition of landlords, the abolition of private property, then like it can go there, it can push for that. And I don't know, like you said, I think I remember the neighborhood you're talking about. It was a primarily in Brooklyn. It was like it was primarily East Asian immigrant families, I think, or maybe we're thinking of different ones.
There's multiple examples of it happening, so I imagine there's different, you know, different ones. Yeah.
But yeah, like Nat and I were sitting down the other day and just talking about like what would be the thing that would, you know, liberate people from capitalism the most, and how would you plan actions that would actually get you there. And honestly, like a rent strike that is pushing towards, like, it's always basically like a strike that the point is to not stop striking. Is ultimately like where the biggest change comes in, and what lots of people when, like we talked before about how like revolution is actually lots of things, but a lot of the time when people talk about revolution, the really specific thing they're actually describing is when some kind of collective organized force goes on a strike, and the point is not to have like people in power give them specific concessions, but the point is like they're done. And like I do think that like rent strikes with the aim of never paying rent again are unbelievably based, and could be a big part of the future of what we see, with like how unbelievably impossible the renting world is, right?
Exactly. And you know, the whole sort of, I guess there's a lot of fear from people to want to back these radical ideas, but you would be surprised how quickly they cotton on to stuff like this when you simply present to them the idea that they're being fucked over, because most people know that anyway. You know what I mean?
Or they like have a sense of like unfairness, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even people who think that it's fine and normal to pay rent, like we get told that like you should be paying like a third of your income is like a reasonable amount to be paying in rent, and like it has been over half of my income for most of my adult life.
Absolutely.
And by the way, a third of your income is still an atrocious amount to give to a parasite.
And that's like meant to be the upper limit, but like it's not that for most people. Like speaking of like community resources and planning this kind of thing, another thing you can do is you can find out the median income for your area,
right,
as well as finding out the median rent for your area. And for example, like in my area, I know that it's literally, it's something like 80%. The median rent for my area is something like 80% of the median income. And like, you're expected to have a month's rent up front, and in some cases the first and last month of rent and the deposit, like, and it's like, how can you possibly pay that? And then as well as that, they'll do like guarantor checks where, you need to be earning enough to be sure that you'll always be able to pay the rent. And it's like, you can just actually do really quick maths to see, and I know people hate doing maths, but like you can do really quick maths to see just how bad the situation is, and that should inspire you to go to your neighbors in that way, because it will be like, well, actually the basic statistics say that my neighbors are probably going to be on side with this, because like I'm just looking at the most basic information, and it's saying that everyone in my neighborhood's getting fucked over, basically.
Disturbo says also, hasn't rent increased by some massive percent in the last 5 years?
Yes.
I think it's something unbelievable, like 40%, whereas normally it increases by a single digit percentage annually. It's certainly not in line with like inflation.
Like inflation and wages and all that kind of stuff.
Since we have 10 minutes left, we should have some final thoughts, and then we should assign homework to our little sweetie little chatters.
Absolutely.
Well, this one might be the go meet your neighbors one, right?
No. I
absolutely. You have a specific thing. No, mind.
I have a specific thing to ask people to do regarding this, and that is, if you are in the UK and you are a renter which is highly likely if you're watching this program or just being in the UK, because I think that my final thoughts on this really is that, like, let's face it, the companies that are rising rents astronomically, the landlords that are rising rents astronomically, know that people can't afford them, and they know that eventually it will get them into debt. And in fact, what's probably going to happen is letting agents, massive investor buy-to-let landlords, are going to end up having agreements with debt management companies and stuff like that. It's going to be this horrific cycle of like, okay, well, now you are basically a slave to your landlord. You're not just like, you have your tenants' rights, but actually, no, you owe them so much money that they've got this connection with this debt management company, and oh my God, you're fucked. So what I would ask people to do with that in mind, because it's a scary future, it's a scary outlook, really, is to find out who owns your property on the land register. Like I said, it's only £3. You go on gov.uk and you type in land registry and you just find out who owns your property. I don't know how to do that in the US or Aotearoa. I don't know if how do you check it before? What did Conrad?
It's a pretty similar thing over here. Is
it? Conrad said something about the tax.
Tax records.
Tax records. So if you're in the US, check out tax records, I guess. I don't know what that means, broadly speaking, but if you know what that means, then there you go. And also, not just to check out who owns your property, because you might just find out it's very boring and it's just your landlord who and he's just a twat. But also check if you're in a shared house, which is also very likely. Check if that house is on the House of Multiple Occupants register. And the reason that I say that is because if your house is a house of multiple occupants, so it's just one person paying rent for a single apartment. If it's 5 people paying rent for 5 different rooms in one house, then you actually need to have a specific license for that, and landlords don't like to pay extra fees, and a lot of them avoid paying the HMO license. Now, if you find out, like for example in Manchester, if you're a landlord and you don't have an HMO license, that means the council could impose an indefinite fine on you, right? So if you want to enter into a negotiation with your landlord based on the fact that your bath has been leaking for the last 5 years and they've not done anything about it, and your mental health is in the pits regarding that, you could actually use that as really good leverage to negotiate with your landlord. Like, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to spend a load of money on solicitors and going to court and all that kind of stuff and trying to, put me in prison for wanting my rights, or, and also an indefinite fine from the council? Or will you just fix my fucking bath? Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I will say, like Nat lived in a place that was, I think it was, I can't remember. I think it was licensed to have like 4 occupants. It had like 6, and it was like literally not fire code safe. It's important
too.
What happened was, like, when they kind of dealt with this issue, or rather, like, it wasn't that they dealt with it. It was that, like, the council found out, and then they all had to move suddenly. And I'm pretty sure that the landlord lost their HMO license because of it. And I just want to say that, like, it's something to be careful with, because as you're pointing out, like, negotiating wise, right, you could have your landlord over a barrel by saying, like, you could have this fine, you could be in, like, it could be more serious than that. You could lose your ability to rent, like, that those are all powerful negotiating chips. But if the council does find out, then you could also just, like, lose your house, because because the council could be
honestly,
rightfully intervening, as it were. But, like,
it honestly depends on, like, what your situation is, and, like, whether you're, like you say, looking to actually, like, speak to the council about it. I wouldn't speak to councils about things personally. But and also another bit of homework that I want people to do is to just literally, and I know this might sound obvious, like fucking obvious, but just Google housing safety regulations in your country. Doesn't matter which country you're in. Just literally Google housing safety regulations, because I guarantee,
see how it stacks up.
I guarantee that you're going to get something that has been brought into law in possibly, like, you know, for example, in the UK, the housing health and safety housing health and safety rating system was brought into law in 2004. Which, you know, imposed a lot of rules on landlords, and, like, you know, how they absolutely need to not have mold in the property, damp in the property, all these kinds of things. And you probably have one in your state or your country too. And if you find out what they are, then you can also understand whether your landlord has broke the law. And if your landlord is an investor buy-to-let landlord, then that's going to do him some serious damage, you know, in terms of, like, not just their reputation, but also, you know, just, you know, their income stream. And you know, if you sat there and you're wondering, oh my god, all this sounds like really, really legally scary and all that kind of stuff, well, the reason that I've said all this stuff to you is because if you are thinking about that and thinking, oh, I can't do this because it's legally scary, I don't want to do it on my own, well, that's the good reason to join a union, or at least start one, because that kind of, you know, prevents you from doing this on your own if you've got backing from a union or a group of your neighbors who are in the same house or in apartment block. So there you go. That's it. It's the John O'Mule Housing Hour. Thanks everybody for listening. You know, different kind of show that we did this week, and I don't mind it just being an hour. Like, honestly, like, I could talk about this for fucking weeks, but, you know, it's you don't want to hear that. And
but you do want to hear it.
Yeah, well, good on you. I was gonna segue, but you got me. It's DJ Mule on Twitch and also on YouTube. I'm also on TikTok under DJ MU3L. And what else do I do? I've got a VOD channel for my streams. I'm on Patreon. I'm on all the stuff. Give it a look. Have a little look, and then you can go and look at my wonderful, beautiful friend Sophie from Mars.
Oh my god, Sophie from Mars. I've heard she's terrible. You should check out my YouTube channel, Sophie from Mars. I just put out a couple of videos there recently. One was about pathologic, one was about kaiju. It's on my Monster Men series. I'm really proud of that one, actually. Mule helped me to film some bits of it. It's very good. I have another big project on the horizon, but it won't be out for a little while. I'll probably put out some, like, kind of very different content to my usual stuff. I'm kind of considering doing, like, a vlog series about, like, where do we go to post if Twitter dies. I'm considering doing, like, little short vlogs, but and some other stuff discussing, for example, UBI. It was these kinds of things while I'm working on my big project, which is about climate doomerism. So I'm doing a lot of reading about climate change right now. It's very depressing. I'm also going through a crisis. So it's really good that I'm doing this to my mental health at the same time. And my family doesn't believe in buying Christmas presents. So if you want to be nice to me over the Christmas period, I have an Amazon wish list.
Get her an Amazon wishlist thing.
But also you could check out patreon.com/Sophie from Mars, which is how I pay the bills. So I'd really advise you check out that one if you want to support me. I also stream on Twitch. I haven't done it in a couple of weeks because of stuff going on, but I hope to do some soon. That's Sophie_FRM_Mars. And but you know what I really want to know about now is Tim and where to find more Tim.
For more Tim, more sweet Tim content, you can find me over on Twitter at Dread Conquest, for as long as Twitter is still going to be a thing. Or on YouTube and Twitch, you can find me as Conquest of Dread. I don't have TikTok or anything, but you can see me. I did make one for the Red Planet TikTok account, which is just red_planet_TV, I think, is that. So we're going to try and put out, like, at least one video every week from each of us. So yes, I got one up there. I think Mule's got one.
That's right.
Is there?
Sophie's got one as well.
I failed. The week
I have a
I was
wrong
meant
one.
to do one.
I did one about the topic that we were going to be discussing this week, and then it changed last minute. So I have one that's not true. But
One in the tank.
It's a liar. It's a liar's
Maybe at a later
TikTok.
point it will become true. Who knows?
It will. I imagine it will. It's still very good.
Yeah.
When
And as
I
Conrad
make
is
my
saying,
TikTok,
go on.
I was gonna say, when I make TikTok, will chatters please support me? Because the first time I tried, I failed and I was having a really bad week. So I just was like, I'm a failure. So when I finally do post a TikTok on the Red Planet TikTok channel, will you please support me?
Yeah. Get
You
on
should all do
that. Get on
Yeah,
that
you gotta
and
get on it.
like all the videos that are on there and add them to your favorites and also share them in an extremely annoying fashion to all of your contacts at once, which is what I do all the time. Every time I see a funny boomer doing something embarrassing on TikTok, as Sophie will attest.
It is true. No, I have probably about 30 notifications from Mule that I will watch after this stream. As Conrad is pointing out in chat, if you want to be watching Red Planet in 2023, you need to be following the Red Planet Live account, which is where we're going to be streaming from next year. But before we talk a little bit about the Patreon, I should remember to say that you should check out Kira's socials, right, Kira?
That's
Yeah.
right. Now I can't tell you
Mhm.
exactly what is in the socials because Twitch won't allow it. But
Fuck
you should
Twitch.
really-
Fuck
That's how you know it's the good
Yes,
stuff.
how you know it's the good stuff. Make sure you check out my socials. Or if you want to just scroll down, if you're on desktop, below there's a panel. There's a lock. If you click the lock, it's like a loot box. You click it, it unlocks and shows my socials. You have access to the socials then. So I want to see more subscribers because I like the attention. Thank you. Thank you
There
for
you go.
listening.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So last
so-
thing would be the Patreon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Give us money. First tier that you want to get on that is Sprite mode. It's the £2. You can get that and you get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. Benefits include not a lot. The sacred and forbidden knowledge that you're helping the Red Planet team. And I think we are now saying yes, Discord access. So yes, you
Discord
will.
for sure.
Yes, Discord for sure.
In my gentle week of nice plans to be nice to myself, I am also going to finally set up the Discord. So there will actually be a Discord
Nice.
you can go to. Stay tuned and also subscribe.
Stay cheeky tuned. The next tier that we've got, it's Goblin mode. Everyone loves a Goblin. We all get a little Goblin mode from time to time. Complete your gobology by going Goblin mode with access to the Red Planet official Discord. Set up cool Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only places like that. Access to Patreon only Red Planet Discord hangouts like the one that Tim mentioned with that person. I can't remember her name.
Donnell Harrow.
That's the one.
Documentary.
That's the one.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Very good.
Then we've got it's beast mode. Holy shit, you actually gonna go beast mode? Well, we can then offer you all the stuff from the other tiers and pin badges. You can wear your excellent new Red Planet pin badge literally everywhere. It's completely cool and good to do so.
Can I just say,
Yes.
Beast mode, yeah, it includes Goblin mode and Sprite mode, and including Goblin mode is the stickers. And if you heard what we were discussing earlier about stickers, how actually they're actually like a big deal. Like slapping stickers on shit actually does matter. That
Big,
actually is like
cool.
a
Maybe you'll put up a Red Planet sticker somewhere, and then next week you come back and someone else will have put up a second Red Planet sticker in that same place.
and then you have
which
to
is
get
really
married.
a waste of advertising space and a bad move, but it lets you know that there is another Red Planet fan employed, if you will,
thank you, Link
in
Retro.
your neighborhood.
Link
That's-
Retro just followed on TikTok. Thank you.
Yeah, more of you need to follow on TikTok. Follow us on TikTok.
Nice.
Like and add to favorites every single video. Share it to all your friends. All that stuff. Do a comment. I don't even care if it's just like comment. I'm not
Yeah,
bothered.
yeah, literally. It doesn't even matter. You just
Yeah.
write like, ha ha ha, cool. If everyone says ha ha ha, cool, there's like a whole wall of them, we will be
Yeah.
so happy. We'll
Yeah.
be so...
Absolutely. No, I would,
That would
I
be
would love that.
extremely.
Okay, can we
I
talk
would.
about the last mode though? Because we
The-
have yet to have any of these, right?
Yes.
I'd really like if we
yes.
had some of these.
I would love it if we had someone who would go sicko mode, which is £94 a month or $100 a month. If you support us this much, we can only reasonably offer you all the stuff from the other tiers, plus a very special thank you message at the end of the stream. As we said before,
Just
it's
right
when
now,
we say,
we would be saying, Effrey Jepstein didn't kill himself. Thank you so much for supporting us as a sicko. You're the best. And you're my best friend, and I love you.
Effers Jeffers didn't do it. That's my
Elon
favorite
Musk
account.
is besties with Ghislaine Maxwell. Thank you so much for your sicko mode.
That's what we'd say. Oh, I sicko moded so hard.
Glimpse.
The crackle came back, unfortunately.
Oh, see, we'll cover over time. Hang on.
Maybe it's related to volume. I don't know because I did go sicko mode.
You know what? No, I don't think that's
Probably
true,
not.
Peanut. No.
Oh,
Anyway,
you're wonderful.
thank you, sweet
JFK's
Kara.
head just kind of did that. Thank you so much for supporting us on sicko mode. And I hope that we get some real sickos next time.
Me too.
Okay, so let's how about, since I was talking about her earlier, how about we raid my friend Nicotine? Yeah.
Yes.
She's doing something called Suck Sunday, and she's still raising money for her charity.
Yes. I love Suck Sunday so much.
We actually all do that.
Yeah, she and I've been on Suck Sunday before. I can't really make it because it's on Sundays when we do our show. But basically, they watch like a really crappy movie and they just heckle it. So.
In the style of Mystery Science Theater 3000, if anyone remembers that, which is why I love it so much.
I love MST3K. My favorite thing. I also love Suck Sunday.
Yes. I also want to just point out that I was mentioning it before, but I didn't get to it. So just before the raid happens, we are literally like £120 away from our goal of being able to pay Conrad for every episode. Please, if you think the episodes are getting better, that's because Conrad is doing stuff for us. Yeah. So imagine how much better it's going to be when we can afford to pay him for every episode. It's going to be absurd. It's going to be ridiculous.
And starting the new year, the crackle won't be there because Conrad will be producing directly.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That will be even better. So
imagine that.
Imagine Red Planet, but no crackle.
Yes.
Wow.
So thank you.
Can't imagine anything.
So thank you so much in advance, everyone, for giving us lots of money. I'm sure we'll come back next week and that'll be completed, won't it?
Cool.
So, yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So, chat, thank you for being here. Can we get some claps for chat?
We should add Suck Sunday as a Patreon reward, actually.
That'd be really fun. You should do that.
We should.
Yay. And I'll see y'all in Nicotine stream. And thank you, hosts. And thank you, Conrad.
Bye.
And bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.